Alright, looks like it's up. Welcome everyone. This is Dominion. It's a J League match. This is Theeman, and I'm with J Nails tonight commentating this match.
Howdy.
So we've got nerilika and ditastrutt. Hopefully I'm saying those right.
I mean, I'm gonna guess Dita Strut. It sounds like a name. Like
Uh,
first name Dita, surname Strut. And then the other one I'm less Nerilika? Nerilika?
I,
Nerilika, my
hey, I'll,
guess.
I'll take your judgment. I remember the first time you commented my game, you were calling me Theeman, and everyone thought you were wrong, and it was right. So I'll trust you on that one. Alright, so good. It's not just base only, so it is J, and we were a little concerned maybe it would be base only, but I do see one of them has expansions, which is nice. So we have our first kingdom up.
Alrighty, what do we got here? Uh this is interesting. And the first thing that jumps out to me is it's got all the components that you would need to do things, but they're all kind of weird and awkward and don't obviously work all that well together. Um, so I'm
Yeah,
not exactly sure where this goes.
yeah. I mean, I see.
The
Obviously,
second that jumps out to me, oh, go ahead.
I say obviously you have the magic lamp. So whenever you have that, it's always a question of is there a good way to pop it? That can always be an interesting sort of tactical part at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, that was actually just the thing I was going to say is what I do think is in the short term the priority is just um, pop magic lamp and then figure it from there. Um, Now, how would one go about doing that? Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you just want as many unique cards as possible. Um, So obviously, like a silver is good. Secret cave can be good sometimes because since the duration that can help because you get it out for each of the 2 turns. And same thing with church actually. So duration cards can be nice to pop, um, just to pop the lamp because you can get them out for you can play them 1 turn and have them out the next turn, which can help you get to those 6 uniques.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely one of my two opening buys is Church. No question there. Church is a great opener.
Yeah,
Great at trashing. Now, double Church is often a good opening. I know DZ suggested that in chat. I mean, you could just take the standard double Church approach and get thin fast and hope to pop a lamp by virtue of having a thin deck. You could also just say like Church Secret Cave or Church Hideout, something like that. Church Potion even might be fine. With the idea of having more unique cards and that giving an advantage in popping the lamp. Now, Nerilika has opened Bureaucrat, which I don't think I like very much. To Bureaucrat's credit, it does functionally give you two uniques for one buy, because like Bureaucrat itself is a card, and it gives you a silver. And so
yeah.
that gives you sort of two different cards, which can potentially count towards the six unique count for
And
Secret
it
Cave or Magic Lamp more accurately. That being said, Bureaucrat's just a really weak card.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm honestly not sure I've ever played and bought a bureaucrat. I'm trying to think if I ever have. I mean, but as you said, it also slows down your opponents potentially. If you're making them have to top deck estates. I do see ditastrutt, or I guess is how we're saying it. I do see they went with a young witch along with the church and the or secret cave. So they went secret cave young witch, and then followed up with a potion.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of these openings. Neither of them has touched Church, which I think is the most obvious card here by a mile as far as openings go. It's one of the only two trashers, and I think the better of the two compared to Hideout. In general, if you're trashing estates first is usually better than trashing coppers because estates are worse for your deck than coppers are. Coppers at least give
Yep.
you one money, but Hideout is not quite as good at trashing estates. You either have to play the Hideout twice just to trash the estate because you get a curse the first time, then you trash the curse, or use Hideout to trash the coppers, and usually you don't want to trash your coppers before your estate, so you end up low economy. And so, as far as trashes go, I would like Church first to trash estate, and then maybe add a Hideout afterwards to deal with the coppers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Think they both go in the Young Witch to try and give out curses, which I think is fine. I think it's a natural inclination to want to curse your opponent, but I do wonder, whether that's going to be effective or because Young Witch, I mean, fundamentally you're not actually gaining any draw from it. You're getting 2 cards, discarding 2, so it's a net 0. Plus you have to pay
Oh no, no,
spend
no,
the
no! It's
card.
worse than that.
Yeah, yeah, net negative 1
Um,
because you have the card itself.
yeah, yeah. Young Witch is functionally like -1 draw. If you start with a hand with Young Witch in it, actually, let's look at Ditastrutt's turn. Starts with a 5-card hand, and then she's gonna play the Young Witch, and then the hand's gonna be at 4 cards afterwards.
Yep.
It draws 2 and discards 2, which breaks even. But the Young Witch has left your hand. And so as far as like increasing hand size goes, Young Witch is actually very counterproductive as compared to regular Age Witch, which is +1 draw.
Yeah. And it also kind of has some negative synergies with Secret Cave, right? Because then you're getting rid of the same cards, right? If you have Secret Cave, you're trying to discard 3 cards you don't need to potentially get money the next turn, and then Young Witch, you're discarding cards. So there's even some negative synergy there.
Yep.
They did get to 5 out of 6, but couldn't quite get the 6th one they needed for the lamp here. It does look like they're pretty new to the game. I mean, I did see in the chat that Ditastrutt said new cards, so that's definitely something you get a lot, I think, at this level. Players who've maybe never seen these cards before.
Yeah,
Obviously, every
and I
time
mean,
you see
there's a
new
lot of
cards, there's a lot going on in Dominion.
there's some complicated stuff here. Like you got Druid with all the boons to consider, and just kind of in general, I don't know, it's kind of like a weird kingdom to play around. So it's quite possible it might just make some mistakes here.
Yeah,
Um,
that's gonna be a sad potion for here if they can't get a second card with the.
Hope they did.
Okay, so they did at least get the Apothecary. I mean, Apothecary's okay. It's not, it's not great, but it's obviously another unique to help pop Lamp. And, if you're getting a potion, then obviously you're planning to get the Apothecary and help you kind of cycle through your deck quicker. I mean, I guess Apothecary can synergize fairly well with Young Witch and Secret Cave because you're getting cards that you can use to discard with those two. So there's a little bit of synergy there, just in being able to kind of get cards that you'll draw a bunch of extra cards that aren't that great, and then you can use those to discard with the Secret Cave or the Young Witch.
Now, one thing that I was thinking about a second ago is there's innovation, and innovation is often really strong. Um, but the main thing to consider for innovation is like, are there any action cards that synergize with it well? And in this kingdom, I'm actually not sure there are. One thing to consider is, can you gain action cards mid-turn? Like innovation is great with anything along the lines of workshop, where you can play your workshop and then maybe gain, I don't know, a village or a smithy, and then immediately innovate it and play it on the same turn. That's wonderful. Especially because if you were like gonna have a dud turn, you could like workshop for a smithy to save your turn, that sort of thing. We don't have any way to gain mid-turn here except for technically wishes, but that kind of defeats the point because a wish puts the action card in your hand anyway. So all it's doing is saving you like 1 action. Um, or alternatively, innovation can be good if you've got cards that you really want to play during the buy phase, like goons, for example. You could buy goons, innovate it, and then get the goons effect immediately for the same buy phase. That can also be really good. And there's cards here that you like might want to play in the buy phase. Like you could buy a bureaucrat and attack them, or buy a church and set stuff aside, but like nothing amazing. And so I could see innovation being skipped here.
Yeah, so looking at kind of what they've done here, I do see they're both getting some hideouts here, which I think is necessary. I think there are a decent number of terminals here that they both have. I think so I think hideout is a card you're gonna want. Hideout and library can be a decent synergy since hideout's a net 0 draw. So I think there's some play potentially with library here. If you're losing cards either Secret Cave or Young Witch and then can hide out into the library, I could see that being viable source of draw here.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to say just because like everything you're suggesting is like it almost works. This game's got like a bunch of stuff that like almost works. Like you've got hideout and library, and those work okay together because hideout reduces your hand size. But that's okay because library increases it again. But then Library really likes non-treasure based payload so that you can like play it and redraw it. And here that's like I don't know, Secret Cave, which I guess counts, but is like not very strong. So you could do like Hideout, Secret Cave, Library. It honestly might be the thing to do here, but it's kind of weak. Likewise, Apothecary. You could do like Apothecary, Secret Cave, which again might be the thing to do here, but it's kind of weak. There's like a lot of stuff that just like it, it almost fits, but there's just like something missing.
Well,
It being like
I
a
see
core
we have the
strategy.
players going for your favorite card, Nils,
Yeah.
with the golds here.
Yeah, that
I
looks
know
like
you're
they're just
not.
gonna buy golds and call it a day. Um,
I mean, there are definitely worse
yeah,
kingdoms for golds. I mean, I know it's obviously
yeah,
not gold isn't the best card, but there definitely are worse kingdoms for gold than this one.
yeah, that's true. Now, one thing I will say is neither of them. Oh wait, that that was a real big misplay there, wasn't it?
I didn't see what was played.
So let me make sure I'm not mistaken. I believe that nerilika could have activated their magic lamp there. Yeah. So they had in play. They had a hideout, a witch, and a secret cave. And in their hand, they had a copper, a silver, and a lamp. And that would have been 6 cards.
Oh, they
And so if they
discarded those
played,
three.
yeah, so they discarded the copper, and then they didn't have six uniques anymore. If they hadn't discarded, they could have popped the lamp and gotten 3 wishes. Um, and neither play seems to be doing this, and I guess maybe they're unaware. But in general, with Secret Cave around, that magic lamp is usually really significant, just because the earlier you pop it off, then the better, because it's just like a huge immediate boost to the quality of your deck. First off, you're trashing what is functionally a copper for free, which that's like not bad in its own right. But then you're throwing 3 free cards of your choosing into your deck, which usually can be like 3 of like the strongest cards, because you can wish for basically anything. And so that just like it sets your deck off
Yeah.
immediately, and then things to just like snowball from there. So getting that early will really set you up to win the game.
Yeah, I see Halo asking, and I'm just curious, like, what are you even wishing for here, I guess? I guess this isn't a kingdom where I think there's a clear target for the wishes. I mean, obviously, I think you should still get the wishes, and then you can kind of figure it out from there, but, like, what are you even looking to wish for? Are you just getting kind of a mix of things here? Are you getting, like, yeah, I mean, I guess there's not a clear target to me for the
Yeah,
wishes.
yeah. Honestly, a lot of the time you don't have a specific card in mind in advance. It's just I'm going to get 3 wishes in my deck, and then looking at my hand at the time, that might
Yeah.
inform which cards I want to gain off of the wishes. Like if I have a starting hand of like village and wit and wish, then maybe I wish for library or witch for like draw, that sort of
Yep.
thing. Gold is not honestly like the worst thing to gain off of wishes because oftentimes that like by the time you pop the lamp, you might be at the point where you're looking for payload anyway, and then gold's occasionally a good payload. And in this kingdom, like wishing for gold might not be unreasonable, just because a lot of the action cards here are kind of weak.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they both have pretty big decks at this point. I mean, they both have a bunch of hideouts, so it'll definitely be interesting to see. You know, they are going for the thinning that way eventually, but
Just
you
a
know,
quick note about Dita's current hand. I would be discarding 2 estates and a bureaucrat here. Nice, nice. Yeah, there we go. So Dita's activated. This is looking good for Dita here. Oh,
yeah, that was
wow.
a nice play.
It look. I could be mistaken, but it looks like she just clicked play all treasures and got lucky.
It does look
If you
like
click
she
the
hit.
auto
Yeah,
if you click the autoplay button, it's gonna play the treasures in no particular order, and there's no guarantee it like waits to play the magic lamp last. As it so happens, it
I
did anyway and
I
gave her
thought it
the
did.
wishes.
I thought it did play the magic lamp last, but I think it. I thought it also, or maybe it doesn't
Does
even
it?
play the magic lamp. I'm not sure, but I think it also plays all your coppers. So that sometimes you can accidentally play too many coppers, you know, and play more
Yeah.
than one. That's where the issue I think I've seen with it is if you hit autoplay, because I've definitely done it before, and then immediately after realize, you know, and you can just undo. I don't even think you have to wait for your opponent to undo on treasure plays. Um,
Yeah, the one context where you get a free undo that doesn't have to be like approved by your opponent is when you click autoplay treasures. You can always undo that, whether
yeah.
your opponent lets you or not. The game will just do it
Well,
automatically
it's
if you click
because you can.
undo.
I mean, you didn't. If you haven't bought anything, there's no game state has changed in any way, so it
Yeah,
makes sense. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess we think Dita's ahead at this point just by nature of getting those wishes. I do see the curses have piled, so we could have a actually pretty quick ending here. I mean, we already have curses piled. You know, I see hideouts at 4.
I don't think we're gonna see a 3 pot here. There's there's not a whole lot going on in these decks. I think we're just gonna see them turn to provinces pretty soon.
The other thing that can get a little bit tricky with these hideouts, I would have definitely thought about trashing that bureaucrat there for nerilika here. Um,
I didn't understand why they played the bureaucrat and then played the hideout. So if you play the bureaucrat, you now know there's a silver on top of your deck, and so you know that hideout's going to be forced to trash a silver or gold, I guess theoretically, if you wanted to.
yeah, so I mean, I guess in net you're basically giving up a silver this turn to make your opponent have to top deck an estate, right? Because you're gaining the
But you
silver.
could have just played the bureaucrat and then not played the hideout afterwards.
Yeah, that is also true.
Like there are some times where maybe you're getting the bureaucrat just to attack them, and you don't actually want silvers in your deck, and you play the bureaucrat and then trash the silvers afterwards just to keep your deck clean. Their decks don't look like that type. It doesn't look like they're trying to keep like a really nice clean deck. They're just looking to fill it with treasures. In which case, I don't know why you'd pass up on one more silver.
Yeah. So now we have the first or another wish here. So we'll see what they go with here. They do have the actions. I could definitely see wishing for a library here, just to gain a lot of draw. I mean, I can also see just getting the gold.
See what they get.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now that they put the bureaucrat, they don't have the actions. I don't really know if Secret Cave was great there.
That was a weird choice to me.
I feel like I'd rather almost just go Church than Secret Cave because then you can just like set aside all the cards and draw them next turn. It feels like both of them. I mean, it looks like both players just kind of skipped Church this game. I'm not sure they just didn't see it or didn't consider it much.
Maybe they're just not religious.
That too. But meanwhile, I mean, Nerilika still hasn't managed to pop the lamp yet, so I think that's definitely going to slow them down. We have another
We got a bunch
wish.
of pagans here dabbling in witchcraft and not doing their Sunday due diligence, and the result is these messy decks full of curses.
So wishing for a hideout, I guess it is trashing a curse, um, which I guess isn't nothing, and but I mean I have to think that Dita's ahead here. That's true. It is still Good Friday, so even more.
That's a good point. I would think you put the library on top.
Probably. It looks like they did not. I mean, I guess I could still put it on top again since they had a second one. But yeah, I would agree. I think you could play double hideout and then the druid and then I guess yeah. I mean, I would even
This seems like a really bad play order. What are they? Yeah, it didn't make sense
yeah.
to me.
I would have probably. Well, I didn't see what they did beginning. Yeah, because now they have to trash something. Oh wait.
Or not
Oh,
they're
they
not
put the
there's not
druid as
really.
Seed's gift. I didn't even look at what the druid boons were this game. I guess I should have looked at that.
I mean, this definitely does not work. I mean, you get to A, but your deck could have done a lot more. They could have played the bureaucrat. they could have trashed the curse. Um, it looks like they didn't take the time to think about what their plan was for the rest of the turn. Like you see the next four cards of your deck, you should probably be thinking like, all right, what am I trying to do right
Yeah.
now this turn? I'm thinking, oh well, look, I see some cards I can trash, a copper and an estate. I see a library that can help me draw.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll
both
play my hideout, draw the library, draw the rest of the cards, and go from there.
both players do seem to be moving pretty quick. Probably too much in some situations. And I think that's a tricky balance to find because I think, especially, you don't want to be the player who plays really slow and takes too long. But then at the same time, I think it is important to be thinking about some of these moves a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, like some of these play decisions are really significant, and it's hard to tell exactly which ones will and won't be like the thing that caused you to dud or not. But I think that like there's a level at which the engine always looks really weak because when you try to do it, it involves inevitably a lot of these like little mid-turn play order decisions where you have to play the cards in the right order to make your deck work right, and they don't put in the time to think about that.
Yep.
And then the result is the deck just never really comes together and doesn't work. And then people get this impression that oh well building just doesn't work. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, building tends to be the best strategy, but it requires emphasis on the finer details to make sure things come together right.
Yeah, or something I know I've been running into recently as also a relatively low player is just like triggering shuffles. That's something I've been trying to focus on in my game. Is just like so many times where I'll just sit there and I'll have a dud turn and I'll sit there and realize, wait, I have all my good cards out and I triggered a shuffle and now I have, six bad cards on top of my deck that and I'm guaranteed to draw them to start my next hand. So that's like another
Oh
example I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
That I
yeah.
mean
Shuffle
here,
management is one of those things that's really significant
yeah, I mean in a game like this
and really subtle.
with huge decks, that's not coming into play too much here, but it's definitely another example of kind of the something you just don't really consider it at a lower level. And that we did see Nerilika pop the lamp, so that you
At
know,
this stage, this should probably be like duchies.
yeah, I was gonna say. I mean,
Um,
it probably is. I mean, it probably could just be duchies to try and, but this game might drag a little bit because it might take a bit for them to get to 8 at this point, with how kind of bloated both these decks are.
Now, like there are some kingdoms I've seen where the kingdom is just like so bad, there's no trashing or whatever. There's just like no reliable way to pop the magic lamp. This is not one of those, and I think that neither player really put sufficient emphasis on activating the lamp early. Like there's definitely cards here that are better and worse for the purposes. Church again, both in general a great card, but also doubly great for activating Magic Lamp. Triply so. Like you'd already mentioned the duration aspect. Just in general, duration cards
Yep.
are better for Magic Lamp because they're in play the turn you play them, and they're in play the next turn. And so there's really likely to be in play at any given time, which is good for having lots of unique cards in play. But a church helps you sort of you know micromanage like where your cards are in the shuffle. So like if you see Church and Magic Lamp and like not a whole lot of other unique cards turn 5, you can set aside the Magic Lamp with Church for next turn, turn 6, where now you've got a Church in play, you've got a big hand, you're more likely to activate. Or
Yeah.
conversely, if you don't see the Magic Lamp, you set aside a bunch of other unique cards, knowing that the Magic Lamp is coming up, and then you can activate stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Church is probably one of the best lamp poppers now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, I mean, it does look like Dita should probably stay ahead here. Um, I mean, up
It
by
is wild
10.
to me that hideouts piled out. That is, I think, overkill.
Yeah, I don't feel like either of them has. I mean, how many terminals? Like, if you look at the number of terminals that have been bought here, it's really not that many, right? Like, I only see a couple. I mean, I only
4,
see yeah,
5.
two bureaucrats, two witches. I guess 6 total maybe, but 10 hideouts, and
One,
so
two, three, 4, 5, 6.
it's
Okay, yeah,
almost
I
like
count. I count
they're
6.
treating hideout as their trasher here, which kind of, as you mentioned, it just isn't as good as church. They did get to a
Yeah, witch,
14
library,
coin
2 young witches,
hand.
2 bureaucrat.
Unfortunately, they got rid of their druid in there to not have an extra buy. So they did wish for a gold there, I guess, just hoping they can get the last 2 provinces.
Yeah, I mean, nothing here looks great for nerilika. I think they're a bit behind.
Yeah, and unfortunately they didn't get the 8 there. I guess we'll see what
I'd,
we
I'd
draw
play the
down
hideout
here.
as ditastrutt.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need the
You
bureaucrat
draw,
at this point.
and this is, I mean, you can kill the estate and play the bureaucrat. That might be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might be right that getting rid of the estate there is better. I mean,
The 1 point didn't look super likely to be a make or break issue. Like if provinces split 1-1, Dita wins. If they split 2-0, then whoever got both of
no,
them
that's I
wins.
was forgetting that since the curses are piled out, you don't have the extra kind of
Yeah.
disadvantage of trashing an estate and getting a curse. Um,
The thing I was really hoping would happen would be if you drew another hideout, or even the young witch would have worked. You could play the bureaucrat and then draw the silver, and then
so
she would have had 8.
interesting. I just noticed Nerilika didn't play the wish there, which actually probably isn't.
Uh,
I mean, I
why?
guess I'm not sure, but I saw they had a wish in their hand. Unless I saw something wrong, they had a wish in their hand and didn't play it.
No, you're right. They had a wish in hand. It says so in the log.
So I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I guess they were trying to save it for and hoping maybe they draw it again in a turn where they need it to get the last province. But it seems like there you could. I mean, I guess you
yeah,
could just
that
go.
didn't make sense to me.
I mean, I
I
guess
would
what are
have
you
probably wished for
getting with the
duchy.
wish? Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to what you said
Well, because
earlier, though. Do you need the duchy to stay ahead victory wise? Because you have to
whatever
assume.
it is, you should be wishing for something. You should absolutely. It could be bureaucrat even. You could like wish for a bureaucrat to attack your opponent and put a silver on top. But you're just the game's very likely to end before you ever draw that wish again. And so if you're not doing something that immediately helps you,
Actually,
then you're doing
probably
the
could
wrong
have
thing.
wished for. Actually, probably could have wished for Druid there, right? And then gotten at least another. I don't what boons. I have to look at the boons again to see what you could have done with that.
River's gift would probably be the most helpful
Yeah,
thing in that
exactly. You
case.
get River's Gift. I mean, at very least, you're getting one extra card next turn for a wish that you're probably never going to see again.
Yeah, so dude is gonna win here.
Yep, I mean, has the win in hand. I'm not sure what they're waiting on at this point.
You don't need to play that. You've got $8 in hand. You don't need to play that either. I'm looking at a silver and 2 gold. Don't play the hideout. I mean, it's not gonna be a big deal. You're gonna trash a random action card, but um,
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing is if you happen to play the hideout and someone draw another province, then you do lose the win. Because then you do
yeah.
have to
I
trash
mean,
the silver. But yeah,
yeah.
you're
She
right that there's
she
no
knows what
reason to
cards are on
play.
top. So
There we go.
okay, there we go.
I did. There was one I
Okay,
was watching in the match earlier where somebody missed a win, like pretty obvious win in their hand, and it always just feels bad.
yeah.
I mean, there's sometimes when you miss like fairly complicated wins, but when you have a win like pretty clearly in hand, it would be a real bummer to miss.
Oh, I still miss wins all the time.
Well, that was the first game, so Dita took that one, game number one. I was looking at the standings earlier, and I believe Dita went 2-4 in their first game, and it's Nerilika's first game, so still pretty early
You
in
mean
the
match?
season.
Match.
Match, yeah, yeah, match.
Yeah.
So
This might be. I don't know if Nerilika is a returning player or not. Who
I
knows? This
think
could be their
they
first
had
match ever.
played one season before. If I looked, I had it up earlier because I was curious before we started. Yeah, they did play last season. They went
Okay, so their
500. It
their
looks
second
like
season.
last season, 15 and 15.
Alrighty.
So
This kingdom looks awful to me.
yeah, another kingdom
uh,
where there just doesn't seem
I
to be a clear strategy or
yeah.
synergies.
Well, if you remove cultist, I think this looks like a perfectly fine, interesting kingdom. It's just there's cultist, and then there's no way to trash ruins. Um,
Yeah.
and so what's going to happen, or what ought to happen, is you just rush to get cultists ASAP, and then you play a bunch of them, and then your opponent's deck is destroyed. Or if you both do that, both of your decks are destroyed, and then you have kind of like a miserable slog of a game. I can't stand cultists. It's one of the cards that's on my ban list.
Uh,
It's really strong, but in a way that just makes games really bad.
yeah, it just makes games really swingy, I think, because if you happen to like
That
not draw them together and then your opponent does, then that just is really bad. I was speaking of ban lists. I was just curious if these players actually did have a banned list. I do see a couple. So one of them looks like they banned possession. So no possession games today. I know you're disappointed about that one.
it it could be that one of these, because if either of these players has had their account for a while, um, if your account existed before the rollout of the ban list, possession starts banned by default.
Huh? I don't think I knew that.
Because yeah, I think the ban lists came out in mid 2019, and before that there weren't any bans or anything like that. And then at some point before that, I don't know, probably like 2018 or so, there was a decision to globally ban possession. The possession was globally banned for like a year or so, and there just never should have been any kingdoms ever. It was wonderful. Um, and they rolled out the ban list, which allowed players to choose, and then unglobally banned possession with the idea that like players would just use one of their ban slots on
And I
possession
think
if
it's
they
still
wanted
like
to.
65%, right? It's something very high. I
Yeah,
know.
the ban rate for possession is incredibly high. It's like by far the largest. But a part of that is any account at all that existed prior to the creation of the ban list had possession added by default, just because they're used to not playing with possession, and so they was just
Yeah.
put on there um, by default. So yeah, that's the deal with possession. So it could be that maybe one of these players has just had their account since
I
pre
mean, they do have
2019 and
some
possession
cards
went by
on their
default.
dislike lists as well. I noticed there's a
Yeah,
list up there, but I did notice that Dita, while we were doing that, Dita did get the 5-2 open, which is pretty good here to be able to immediately get a cultist. Especially with a two
yeah.
card in Vagrant that, well, not great, is still better than not being able to buy anything on two. Um,
I would not have bought the Vagrant. I don't think. Um,
really?
I think Vagrant is worse than nothing here. Well, just because with the long term game plan, I expect is just going to be play a lot of cultists, right? And best case upside for Vagrant is if it's in your starting hand and you play it and you happen to reveal an estate or ruins or whatever, it'll draw you that, and it'll
Yeah.
save you a draw. But a very large risk is if you're drawing a bunch of your cards with the cultist, there's a pretty decent chance your Vagrant is getting drawn dead by the cultist, and then you never get to play it at all. In which case, the Vagrant is costing you a draw, and so that risk is, I think, pretty substantial.
That's a good point I hadn't thought about. I mean, I had thought more about the defensive aspect of Vagrant. Like, once your deck is bloated later in the game, having a bunch of Vagrants might help you to draw some of those ruins and negate a little bit of that. Um, but I can see what you're saying. I think there's definitely some trade off there. Uh,
Now let me look at what nerilika did. I don't like nerilika's opening. In fact, I think it's really, really
I
weak.
didn't see what they did.
Um, they opened Storeroom Advisor, and there's a few things going on. The most substantial is just in this kingdom, cultist is the power card. Really strong, really centralizing. We were talking about that a second ago. And so my main thought for the opening is what's going to get me to five.
Yeah.
And honestly, here that's just like double silver. There's no kingdom cards here that are really better than silver at getting you to five early. So I would just open
Yeah.
silver, silver, and then start clicking cultist.
I see Dita took an advisor over a cultist there at 5. And then we
That's
see
really
nerilika take a hunting grounds.
yeah. These are definitely incorrect. Um,
Yeah, I feel like how are you going to make
I think
hunting grounds work without any villages is going to be tough. I mean, you're just going to be drawing a bunch of cards dead. I guess you're farming village. Okay, there is a village in here. I did see
yeah.
that.
I mean, you have farming village and all. It's just there's cultists from the kingdom. That card is really really good. Anytime you have five and you didn't buy cultist, you made the wrong decision. And that goes for six and seven and whatever.
Yeah, I think I know I was talking about this the last game I did with KHG the other day, but something I think new players in particular can get attached to is, oh, I have 6, so I have to buy a card that costs 6, and forget that there are sometimes cards that cost 5 or 4 even that might be better, both overall and in particular in a certain deck scenario than the card. So just because the card's more expensive doesn't mean it's better.
Well, I would say most of the time, in fact, it will usually be the case that there is at least one $5 action card in the kingdom that is stronger than gold.
Yes, that is true. That's true. We haven't talked about Gardens here. That's a good point, Malo. Gardens is definitely an interesting card here. I mean, I think it's definitely going to be something we're going to want because, especially with the Cultists giving you a bunch of ruins, I think we are going to have reasonably big decks and no way to trash anything. Uh,
I do think it as let's see which of them. I think it's nerilika didn't have the 5/2. Yeah, as nerilika, I think you could very viably say like my opponent's got the 5/2. They're gonna open cultist, and my best way around that is I'm just gonna accept that I'm gonna lose the ruins and try to go for the gardens rush, where you just take a bunch of engineers and trash them for gardens, and then try to pile out gardens, engineer, and
and
ruins.
Vagrant probably. Well, you'd also maybe want to do Vagrant, get some Vagrants in there too. Is a decent synergy because it helps you draw through some of those ruins a little bit quicker, and Gardens as well. Um,
Well, I mean, you already have 3 piles emptying there, right?
that's
I
true.
mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, hypothetically, if your opponent just like stopped giving you ruins or whatever, then maybe you'd need a different pile. Um,
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about piling Vagrants. I'm just saying also having those available for a handful of them. To pick
well,
up
the
with some
issue
of the
is,
early engineers could be good.
but then, but then, when are you gaining them? Are you passing up on gardens for them, or passing up on engineers for them?
I mean, I was thinking, yeah. I mean, I was thinking you get some before you get the Gardens, but
Oh no, I would just be treating it like a rush, just
that's
straight
true.
for gardens. Um, Now you can maybe take a silver or two in that deck because you'll need to be paying off debt with a really weak deck, and honestly, paying off 4 debt with a deck that's full of ruins and has a 0 economy might take a while. And so, if I were going to gain something before gardens, it would be some silvers. Um, I never did get around to talking about the specifics of Neralika's cards. Advisor, I think, is not a very strong card. It's it's superficially like a laboratory because it net draws you 1 card in the same way laboratory does.
Yeah.
The problem is it discards like all your good cards to the bottom of your deck. And so advisors like it always draws you the wrong cards and makes all your good cards miss. And it's just like really, really bad. Especially because an opponent who's just like, you know, like thoughtful about it is gonna make sure that you never find those cards. Like whichever cards are good or bad in the abstract. I think a very good rule of thumb for whenever my opponent plays an advisor is like discard the draw cards
Yep.
because then they're never going to draw back around and find the good cards in the first place, and then they're just in trouble and the deck fizzles out. So the advisor is usually really weak. Advisor is good when you can get a thin deck, like you can trash a bunch, and then you have like a deck that's a bunch of advisors and only good cards, and your opponent just kind of like has no choice but to give you something good.
And
But
you're
these
gonna
decks
draw
are
at the
not
end
going to be like
anyways.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you?
You're gonna have like a ton of coppers, and then every once in a while it's gonna reveal a cultist, and then surprise, they discarded it. Um,
Speaking of that Gardens rush, I see Malo and Topher were debating: is the double engineer open viable here? I mean, because I know we were talking about there wasn't a great open to get to 5 right away. So like, I guess if you are committing to the Gardens rush, I'd be curious to see how that plays out. I guess if I were to see this
yeah,
kingdom
I mean,
ahead.
you could definitely consider doing gardens, and if you do, I think double engineer seems like a very reasonable open.
So I'm trying to see how big these decks are roughly. I think they're probably both at least 30 cards by now. Um, looks like it was 20. I saw 20 there. I saw maybe Dita's like 25 right now, a little over that. Uh,
Well, let's see. Now we can tell exactly 15, 20. 21, 22, 23.
Yeah, I mean, so they're in the 30-point range. And so, and it still could be a while before the. I mean, I don't. I guess I'm not seeing what the third pile is gonna be here, so it could still be a while.
These decks seem kind of unfocused. I'm not sure what either of their game plans is. Here's a good example: two junk cards and a cultist. Guess where the cultist is going?
Yep. Or not.
What? I guessed wrong. I was guessing the discard.
I guess they're worried they had
But
more other actions to play, but
why,
yeah,
why
that
did
seems surprising.
Dita discard Acropolis?
That I guess they
So
thought maybe Nerilika had actions to play there.
it's a good thing I'm not a betting person because I would have put money on that and I would have lost. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I my thought is it's just based on trying to prevent a combo bunch of actions, which obviously in hindsight, with us being able to see they have no other actions, it is easy. And I mean, I still agree. I think the Cultist is definitely the clear card they should be trashing. But just
No
trying
way
to
to
keep
prevent a
it
combo with to deny them the
neutral.
actions that are worth playing. Yeah, that was definitely not the correct decision. Um,
So I do see. So the ruins are gonna pile here with this last Cultist. Um, I don't know. It feels like most of the ruins went to Neuralika. I haven't kept exact track, but I would guess a seven three
let's
eight
see.
two type split without going through the log and checking.
Control F is suggesting 5-5.
Oh, it's 5-5.
Yeah.
That is much closer than I would have thought just from looking at what I've seen. Ooh, and this is where sort of that hunting grounds we saw earlier was rough because they drew a bunch of actions dead. I mean, they drew a farming village and cultist dead there with that hunting grounds.
Yeah, so given the openings, when we saw Dita open Cultist and Nerilika open two things that don't get you to Cultist, I would expect this Ruin split should be like 8-2, 9-1, 10-0, something like that.
Yeah.
But then we saw Dita continue to like not prioritize Cultist from there on out.
Yeah, because I remember they had the turn where they had 6 and they went with, or no, they had 5 and they bought an advisor over a cultist. Um,
Yep.
yeah, this could still go on for a while. I don't think this game is super close to ending anytime soon.
I would strongly consider just buying gardens here. Just take the gardens and then empty the last three vagrants.
Yeah, I think I like that.
I
You could
would not
almost
consider advisor.
you could actually do engineer, right? Because engineer you could basically use as a double gardens, uh, right? Because you could then just so I almost think you'd take an engineer or two here because you'd get to gardens faster in the end by being able to play it and get 2 gardens.
Well, if you draw back around to it and don't draw it via advisor and don't draw it at cultist or hunting ground.
That's true. You do have to worry about that, but I think you'll have the time to draw around to it. I think. Um, but yeah, in terms of advisor, that is a good point that they might just ditch it with advisor.
Discard that.
Man, it's so sad to see a game with ruins and no way to trash.
What? What are you doing?
Yeah,
Object a copper and an overgrown estate.
that definitely. I'm not sure the logic on that one.
So this is the second decision now. So when you're looking at cards for your own deck, like with survivors, it behoove you if you see two bad cards to discard the bad cards, so your own deck has not bad cards in it, or not on top of your deck at least. And then when you're looking at your opponent's deck, for example, when they play an advisor, and you get to choose whether to give them the good cards or the bad cards. Then you want to discard the good cards and keep the bad cards. Um, Dita is doing those things backwards.
Yeah, and that's so. This if Dita can manage to draw a farming village here, that would be a really big turn for them. Obviously, it's not super likely, but this is a Dark Ages cage match. It does kind of look like it. With how many of these
How
cards
many of these are Dark Ages? I don't even know.
I don't
Let's
know.
see.
I've never really paid attention to which
One,
expansions cards come from,
two,
but
three, four. Four of them. Storeroom, Vagrant, Cultist, Hunting Ground.
I guess that makes sense why there's ruins since it's so likely. Yeah, I mean, well, shelters comes because they have Dark Ages. Like the more Dark Ages cards, just increases the likelihood of having shelters in the set. Ooh, they got Necropolis. They got the Farming Village and Necropolis. This is going to be a big turn for them. Being able to get the hunting grounds and a lot of draw. Of course, they don't have any money, so if they don't draw any money, I guess it doesn't really do them anything. But I guess they do have the apothecary to get some coppers. I do see each
They're
of them
catching
got
up on some
one
things.
province. They each did get one province. I still definitely think at least one of them should have been transitioned to gardens, if not both of them, because I would guess by the end of the game they're both going to be at 50 card decks at
Yeah,
the rate
I
they're
mean, Gardens
going.
is looking good right about now.
I guess we could try and see how many Dita has here now.
And
It's a
from
lot.
Dita's perspective at the beginning of the game, I don't think the goal was going to end up being Gardens. I think the goal was going to be buy a bunch of cultists and then Province when my opponent's deck is flooded with junk.
They managed to draw deck here, which is pretty impressive considering how many cards are in the deck.
Um, do they have a ruined market? I don't think so. There's nothing to show for this.
No, I mean there's really not. I don't even think they have a storeroom or anything. So yeah, they don't. So they don't have a second buy. I mean they don't even have that much money. I mean they get 11 money,
Why did they?
12 money.
Oh no, Dita. So Dita knew there was an advisor on top of the deck. They played their apothecary and it revealed that the advisor was there. And then they played the ruined market, knowing not the ruined market, the ruined library, knowing
Yeah.
that all it was going to do was draw that advisor and take it off the top of their deck. Um, I mean, advisor is a bad card for sure. It's in a deck like this, it is definitely still an above average card. I don't know why you would take it off the top of your deck and throw it in the discard.
I think those are the things they probably just aren't even thinking about.
Yeah,
Especially, they're both playing fairly quickly. I mean, the games are taking a little while because they're kind of slog games, a lot of turns, but they're playing the individual decisions pretty quick, and so it's probably just not something that they're really thinking about. But you're right.
yeah. These are
That's
little decisions we were talking about earlier that can make or break a game.
no, they definitely can. And now they're just going gold. Yeah, I'm definitely surprised neither players has gone the gardens route. Because it feels like your deck's going to get 4 every turn, right? Like if you look here, 21, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11,
This is
12, 13.
province.
So I guess they only have 34, so they're not quite as big as I thought they were. Um,
This is province in silver, I would think.
yeah, what do they have? They have 10,
11.
11. Yeah, I would think
Wait,
province.
why did they not describe the survivors? I mean, I guess it's thematic that survivors survived to be the last card in their hand, but that didn't make any sense. They couldn't even play it.
Yeah,
Just pass up on a free coin.
I mean, I guess if they just wanted province estate, it didn't really matter. I mean, I guess getting a state there isn't terrible. I mean, if you're forgetting about the fact that gardens exist in this set, then
Did they decide in advance that they want a province or a state, or did they end up with 10 because they didn't discard survivors and then decide,
yeah,
oh,
that
now I can only
we
afford
will
province
never know
and state?
unless they tell us after the match. But I mean, in the
Yeah.
absence, like if gardens didn't exist, I could see a state being reasonable there because it does get you that just being up by one. You know, Dita I don't believe has any buy in their deck. We saw them go
Oh,
through the
real
whole
quick,
deck.
here's an important decision. Let's see if Dita does it. If you put the survivors second from the top here and play the vagrant, you can guarantee that your vagrant successfully draws the survivors. Nope, they didn't do
I
it.
think they probably just top decked right away. Yeah, I think you have a good point, DZ. Yeah, I definitely think lower leagues don't resign nearly as often. I mean, I'm not sure why you think this is resignable for either player right now. Personally, like it definitely still feels like it could go either way. I think some of that is just like there's a lot more room for big blunders and for
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
people to
Two
mess up,
thirds chance. Just put the copper anywhere except for where the copper currently is,
or
and
just
this vagrant's
discard the
going to draw.
copper. That works even better.
Oh, that was no. I was. I thought that was an apothecary thing being resolved. That was an advisor thing. Never mind. This
Oh,
is fine.
yeah, you're right.
Um, I misinterpreted that.
Yeah, no, you have a good point, DZ. I definitely agree that lower league players. I think some of it is like they want to play it out. Just in some ways, it can be good experience to play a game out and kind of see what the end game goes to. And in some ways, I think it's just maybe they don't realize that they're that they're fully out in some games. I think it also is just that in some games they're you know they just want to see how it plays out and they don't realize it. And so those are kind of two of the main reasons. And also maybe like at this level, like your opponents can definitely make big mistakes. Maybe end up accidentally cause himself a dud turn, and then all of a sudden you're back in the game. It's not like at the top level where once you're clearly behind, I think you know that the opponent's gonna be skilled enough to put it away, and that can definitely go awry at this level. I think.
This storm is doing work now.
Yeah, it really is. Like Storm, I think I didn't value how strong it was going to be in this set with just the vast number of bad cards you're going to want to discard.
Well, to be fair, storm shouldn't be in either deck. Given like if you were playing optimally, either you'd play the cultist thing, which doesn't want storm, or you'd play the gardens thing, which doesn't want storm. Given that we have this kind of awkward medley of cards, storm has ended up being very good. Um, but that's not to suggest that like get at the start of the game, it was Storm was going to be a power card here. It is
That is true.
a number of decisions have led us to Storm being good. That Duchy is a mistake, isn't it? There's Gardens is already worth at least as much as Duchy, and only
Yes.
potentially more from here.
Yeah, I believe Gardens is probably already worth 4 for Neuralink. I think they were at like 36 when I counted a couple turns ago. Um, well, I did see one player bought a Gardens. I have to assume since Neuralink it didn't there that it was ditastrutt. And it looks like it's at
I would also assume
3 point.
that because it's in Dita's hand right now.
That is true. I believe it's at 3 point Gardens at the moment. But I'd have to imagine it's going to get to 4 soon. Just looking quickly.
Something DZ was saying a second ago, and I agree with, is the there's this bottom text effective cultist when you trash this +3 cards, and I wish that effect were on like any other card because that seems like such a cool effect to me, and it's one that just never comes up. Well, literally never for me because I ban cultists. But even if you play with cultists, like you never want to trash it because you've got a bunch of them into your draw card that chain together, and so it's pretty rare to even want to do that or have a good way to do that, especially in like bad like sloggy games like this. You don't have a good way to trash
Well, I mean,
cultists.
here there's just zero way to trash. So here, it's
Yeah,
never going to happen.
yeah.
But
But like you put that on another card, and that'd be such a cool effect. Like put that on a village, like farming village, and that'd be an interesting decision. Pop the village, like you pop a mining
yeah,
village for
exactly. I was going to say, kind of
draw.
like Mining Village is an example of like a. Yeah, I think that's a good point that it is an effect that. Honestly, until it came up at the beginning of this chat, I'd forgot it was even an effect like Cultist. Because it just comes
Mhm.
up so rarely. Ooh, this is a very unfortunate hand here for nerilika. Obviously, depending if they happen to get a draw card with their vagrant, but that's looking like that might be a losing hand there.
That's interesting. We're getting mining village. I actually think the mining village decision is kind of non-trivial because you don't always know if it's going to be your last turn or not, and so you kind of have to decide like, is this the turn where I'm going out with a bang and popping on my villages and trying to end the game now, or is it not?
Yeah, and there's definitely times when you could say, oh, like I need to get like it may not be the last turn, but like oh, I need two more to get a province if it's say a single buy game, and you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can afford to trash one here and get the province this turn. So I definitely think there are times when you play it not in your last turn. I mean, I agree, like you're most often doing it on the last turn, but and as Halo mentioned, sometimes you could pop mining for an early hand. Okay, so they did manage. So Dita did. Do you think they buy the province here, knowing what you know? Do you think that's a risk they should be making here, or do you just take other gardens?
Hmm. As Dita, that's a good question. I don't know. So like obviously you have the generic penultimate province rule thought of I'm behind in points. If I buy this province, my opponent buys the last province. Um, but then you could of course think like if the game drags on, my deck is worse, and I want to like take the risk and try to end the game fast.
Is their deck worse though? I'm not sure. I mean, they've been able to draw deck a few times. Yeah, and Dita did play more gardens. Oh, they got the gardens bump here. Good point, Topher. They must have just hit 40. Uh, there was a cool game on the last.
Oh, they're
Uh,
so close.
there was a
I
cool
think
game.
I would.
I'll wait after this game. I'll bring up my story. We'll see who. Let's play out this game first.
Real quick, I think I would put Apothecary on top and then drop with the Ruin Library. Okay, they've done that.
They did do that.
And they
Yeah,
got the win.
they
Wow.
actually
Yeah.
did the draw
Good job.
correctly. Look at that. Those little decisions coming back to really give them the victory. Just it's cool to see that that happens. That they're able to actually make a good decision there and it pays off with the win.
Yeah, I think had this game drawn out, Nerilika would have won. So this was a very good, I guess, draw for Dita there.
Yeah, there was a really cool game. Actually, it was on the. I think it was Munster was doing it for my at the end of my last league season. I needed the win. I ended up needing this win to promote, where I had to trash. I had to call multiple guides to be able to gain a gold from a tunnel that then was used to play an outpost turn to gain the 3 cards I needed to bring all my gardens up 1 point and get me the victory. And it was like I had to literally and I had to plan it out. I spent like 4 minutes planning it out. Like, okay, what are the odds of different things? 'Cause I needed to draw 3 cards, so I had to guide twice to be able to discard tunnels to gain golds. And it was a pretty epic game. And it ended up being the difference between me promoting and not in the season. So gardens can definitely be a game where it's really important to track that, to see how many cards you
Oh
have in
yeah.
deck. So
Oh no, here we go. Here's a much stronger kingdom.
yeah,
Um,
this looks very intriguing, to say the least.
so the things that jumped out to me here, obviously you can build really big here. You've got Page, which will eventually become champion, gives you unlimited actions. You've got draw with Sheepdog. Once Sheepdog runs out, City will also be draw. All that works really well. The other thing that stands out to me is Artificer plus Sheepdog is a really nice
Yep.
interaction. Because if you have a Sheepdog in your hand, Artificer can activate it because Artificer gains the thing mid-turn, which causes your Sheepdogs to be able to draw. But then B, Artificer can put another Sheepdog on top of your deck, and then you draw the second Sheepdog with the first Sheepdog. The second Sheepdog also activates because it's still like the immediately after gain period, and so you can draw like a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know, Malo. I don't don't know if page is skippable here. I definitely think it's not as clear. Like you have to go very heavy into it right away. But you
I
know,
think only take page on 5-2 in the opening. And now later on, even if you didn't open with page, you could definitely pick one up pretty easily, like off of Artificer or whatever.
yeah, that's a good point. I think I usually just consider just always opening with it because I feel like usually that's what you want to do with it. And it does look like they both decide to open with it, which it's not. I don't think it's a terrible decision.
I think Priest Page is a very reasonable opening. It's like a very automatic thing. It's like
Yep.
I pick up the page because page is a card you usually want to get in the opening turn one or turn two. And if you get Priest because it's the trash. I think this is a very, very reasonable, high quality opening. Now, my thought would be I think this Artificer Sheepdog thing is strong enough and snowbally enough that I'd want to like maximize the chance of getting there fast. And something like
Yeah,
if I had 4/3 Priest plus Expedition, would be very nice. Otherwise, maybe like Priest Sheepdog.
yeah.
Um,
I'm not sure about that city from nerilika. I'm not sure city's really
I'm
a
sure
good.
about it. I'm sure it's not a good decision. The city's really
Yeah,
bad.
I mean, normally City's a reasonably good card, but A, it's not a card you're going to necessarily want early because a lot of the effects come, when piles are emptied. And as you mentioned, there's another great 5 in Artificer. I think Coven, while not great here, is still, I think, a better 5 here because it's still giving you payload and it is exiling some curses, and at least getting you to hit a few times before the champions come in. So,
Oh, oh no, gold. That's almost.
yeah,
That's actually worse than the city. That's definitely worse than the city. Um, yeah. So
yeah,
talking about both of these. First, the city. Like you got to think of the short term. The things that you do immediately create snowball effects that then make the rest of the game good or bad for you. Like the things we were just discussing a second ago is like it's reasonable to get it's reasonable to get page early because you want to get the ball rolling and get to the champion, or it's reasonable to get the artificer early to get the sheepdogs, whatever. You don't get the cards that you eventually want now. You get the cards that are going to get you places. And early in the game, City is absolutely useless. It's literally just Village, like the $3 Village, no frills from the base set. City is that for most of this game
yep.
until Sheepdog's power. Then it gets really good. Then you want a bunch of cities. But until then, you just bought a village for $5, which is really, really bad.
And it's not like you even
Um,
have all that many terminals that you're playing all that early
yeah.
to even really, you know, need a city, even a village for. I did see Dita did get the Artificer finally. I also saw they both went courtiers here at some point, or there's 2 gone at least. Um,
Now, as for gold, so firstly, I'm pretty sure Dita should know better. I've definitely commentated one of Dita's matches from last season, 2 seasons ago. I don't know when it was, but like I've definitely commentated a Dita Strut match before. And there's like a 99% confidence that in any like J League match I commentate, I ranted about how bad gold
oh,
is
I
elite.
mean, I remember the first one you
Yeah,
commentated one of mine. I think it was I, not Jay, but I remember definitely the next
yeah,
few matches after that. I very much was like, okay, I'm not gonna get gold here unless I really need it.
yeah.
So I can
I
attest
held
to
off in
that.
that game one because that kingdom was weak and weird, and
And
gold
one,
wasn't even like clearly worse than any other card. But most of the time, this one included, buying gold was just bad. Gold is it's a stop card, right? It's junk that is slowing down your ability to get through your deck. You have cards you want to be playing frequently. For example, your page line cards.
ooh, here we
You have
go.
your priests that you want to be trashing with. Adding another treasure to your deck is making you less likely to find those. Secondly, in almost any kingdom, there's just like really good action cards most of the time. Like the odds that you roll a kingdom with is like no cards that like gold are like relatively low. Um, and here there's plenty of them. Like I would love to get an artificer, for example, or a
Wait,
sheepdog or a
hang
caravan.
on.
A lot of these cards
So
are.
I'm just looking at what Dita just did. She courtiered and courtiered the Artificer and only got the +1 action instead of courtierficing the Sheepdog.
Oh goodness.
Okay, it looks like they did notice and now they're doing it undo.
What
That's
are you sure they're undoing that decision?
maybe. I mean, they requested undo. I don't know if that's the specific decision. Um,
But they only undid one decision. You have to undo like one,
yeah,
two, three
like
decisions
technically
to
you
get
did
back there.
draw, which like technically would But I mean, you do see the Artificer Sheepdog combo hopefully come out here. I mean, I guess the downside is you
Yeah,
don't
I don't think
really
she's
have enough.
undoing that decision. I think she's undoing the Artificer thing. But yeah, just to clarify, core tier cares about
And
the
then
number
she
of types the card
didn't.
has,
Ooh, she didn't buy
and
anything with the art. Didn't get anything with the Artificer to play the Sheepdog.
okay, there's too many things to fix, or like you're getting like a backlog of things. So let's do them in reverse order. So that one, I was explaining at the beginning, Artificer Sheepdog is great because Artificer can gain you things immediately, like in the middle of your action phase, which then activates Sheepdog, which lets you draw during your action phase, so you can play on and continue your turn. If you don't gain anything with Artificer, then you failed to activate the Sheepdog, and you've kind of missed the whole point of that combo. Now, back to the core tier thing. Core tier cares about the number of types in a card. Now, there's a bunch of 2 types here, right? Coven is 2-type, action attack. Same with Young Witch.
Sheepdog.
Sheepdog is action reaction. Caravan is action duration. I think there's some 3 types in the Traveler line. Page is 2-type, action traveler. Warrior is action, attack, and traveler. Basically, there's like a bunch of good targets for that. And relevantly here, she had a sheepdog in her hand. So if you have the core tier and you reveal the sheepdog, you get 2 choices. You could choose like plus action and plus coin, or plus buy and plus coin, or you can get a gold if you wanted to for some reason. And then revealing
Oh
artificer
no!
means you don't get that choice.
I just saw this.
Oh,
Didn't got the 8. As
I'm not
soon
even
as I
finished
saw the 8,
explaining the previous one.
as soon as I saw the
Stop.
8, I knew the province was coming.
Rule number 1 is don't buy gold. Only shortly after that is don't buy province so god darn early. Yeah, province is such a bad card. It's probably the second worst card after gold in terms of like things that players overvalue.
Yeah.
Yeah, this kingdom is big. It's strong. So much going on. There's no reason to be greening so early.
I mean, I think it
That's
just goes back to
yeah.
when you first start playing Dominion, especially not always, but a lot of times in the base set, like it does seem like a decent strategy to just get enough money and gain provinces, and it can be. And some of it's also, as you talked about earlier, just when you're new to the game and you just can't build the engines as well. That a lot of time the big money province, single province strategy will beat a poorly constructed engine, or an engine where you're playing the actions in the wrong order or just not maximizing the potential of the engine. So I think it kind of self-reinforced, right? Of like, okay, you learn the game and you see the money thing works, and then you try to build an engine and the engine doesn't work because you don't build it right. So then you're like, oh, so money must be better.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, as you do start to get better at the game, you start to think about the engines. But then, and then like I said, but then you say, oh, this person did a cool engine with these cards. So then you try it, but then you miss some part of that engine, and so then you just fail miserably. And then you're like, okay, I'm just gonna go back to what I'm comfortable with again, in the
Yeah.
money province, get a province kind of strategy.
Yeah. If your goal is to like get good long term, like say you want to promote to like I don't know F division or so, you're
Right.
definitely going to want to learn how to build a good engine
Yep. That's
because
where I'm
big
at.
money caps out at a relatively low level.
I'm at the
You're in
point
F
where,
division right now.
oh, I'm not even that high. I'm an H still. I'm
Okay.
still very. I mean, I'm definitely getting better, and I've been trying to improve. But yeah, I ended up demoting from H because we had a 3-way tie for. We had, I think, 5 of us within a game and a half in my one season H. I was one game away from promoting from H to G the season before, and then the next season we ended it literally five of us within a game and a half, and I got the short end of that.
Yeah, I was picking a pretty arbitrary threshold. Let me.
Yeah, no, I agree though.
I'm gonna pull up the league ratings. I'm gonna tell you how far I think you could get playing just big money. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely at the point where I think I try to play the engines, and I think I'm like shaky enough at the engines that it doesn't always work out for me. So like, I'm definitely at that point where I'm trying to play the engines because it's working, and I just butcher them enough that I do lose sometimes to the more simple big money strats that aren't needed there.
Oh, this is disappointing. A Simple Me's stats appear to only go through Division F. But here's the average ratings for Division F. As of this season, the average player in Division F is a 50.8 rating. with a 0.595 mu.
Okay.
Um, I think you could probably get to F division playing big money really well. I think you could get to level 50 maybe. It doesn't seem unreasonable to me that like a money only player could cap out in the low 50s. I don't think you get into E. E is 54.4 average level, and I feel like the 54.4 person can punish you for only playing money.
Yeah, I mean, you also just probably have to win an F division, right? I think F's one that only has one promotion into E, so like those tiers are always a little bit harder. Anyways, back to this game. It looks like we're almost over here, actually. One province left. And it looks like nerilika is probably going to get it here. Maybe.
I, I never even finished explaining how bad buying gold was, because yet another point that I hadn't even gotten to that also exists in this kingdom is you've got like, again, if you wanted gold, you shouldn't want gold so that much here for a very long time. But like in the eventuality that you've already got your champion, you've already cleaned up your deck with priest, and you're finally ready to add payload, there's a card here that gives you as many golds as you want, which is courtier. And there's
Yeah.
another one with the hero as well. If you could have a hero if you wanted to as well. Um, and so if you wanted golds, why get one gold? Just why buy
Well,
the gold when you could buy a courtier, which gives you unlimited golds?
yeah. Well, nerilika does take that one. I believe that's their first game, right? So that's 2-1 to Dita, I believe. I already forgot what the score was. I think that's 2-1 to Dita. Um,
I don't even think wandering. So referring to the chat, the wandering money account. I don't even think it played money. I'm pretty sure I've played it before. It just Freaky just played an engine. And the name was just a name.
I was thinking, KHG, speaking of the one money thing, I know they've been talking about doing some sort of bingo tournament. I was thinking that would be a good bingo card. It's just you can only gain one card per turn. You know, if there is that sort of bingo tournament that happens. But, anyways, oh gosh. Double
Wow.
Traveler.
And cultist.
I I personally don't really like the Traveler lines. I know I've toyed with having both them on a ban list at different points, just because I find that I don't like how dependent it makes the shuffle and the draws. Um, so I
I
definitely
like Peasant a lot and dislike Page a lot. My opinions on them are very different.
yeah it more for me. I just don't like how it affects like how dependent it is on like it really sucks to bottom deck either of those your first time through the deck. Oh gosh, with
Yeah,
Urchin as well.
there's a lot going on.
All right.
Oh goodness, there's so many things going on. So how are we playing? Um, hmm,
Yeah, I mean,
hmm. Well, Merchant
yeah,
Guild is definitely not the correct decision. I haven't decided exactly what the order is, but it does not involve Merchant Guild.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, with the 5-2, I mean, I feel like just cultists and one of the traveler lines probably
yeah,
seems like what I would do with the
Hold is Page.
5-2.
I think Page looks more important than Peasant here to me. I want to get to Champion because it activates
Yeah,
Cult,
I
non-terminal.
think I would agree.
Yeah, so 5-2 cultist Page is really clear. Long-term goal also is kind of clear, right?
Wait, they went Druid, so they didn't go either the cultist or the page.
You've got four cards that are really strong here that stand out: cultist, urchin, peasant, and page. The tricky part is like the order to get them in, because a lot can hinge on like early game decisions and the order in which we buy things. I know Chad's discussing double urchin with and you delay the peasant and the page, so you're not getting to disciple or champion as fast. Maybe teacher if you want teacher. Maybe you get teacher here. But it has the advantage of you get mercenary early, and then that helps you trash a bunch, and then really thin deck, and then you add your peasant and your page, and you're playing the most turns. That's definitely viable. Alternatively, you could also consider maybe you take the early page and or peasant, and then you try to thin with I don't know, like banish or something like that. On the 5-2, I'd strongly consider something like that as like cultist page and angle thinning via banish. rather than double urchin.
KHG seems to not like this board a lot of bannable. I mean, keep is, yeah, a keep is on this board, which I think, I hope it doesn't lead to one or both of them really going a big money deck here, which unfortunately I think it might, because I think it is easy to do that. Um,
Keep looks like it rewards big money, and it very much does not. I know people dislike keep, and I get how it's really polarizing. I really like keep because I think it actually really rewards engines. If you build a big engine, you can often afford to spend the last few turns just like gaining a bunch of treasures all at once,
that
and then
is
you
a
beat
good
out the big
point.
money deck. Like here, for example, you could trader to cultist in the last turn and gain like 5 silvers, take an edge there.
That's true. Trader does become a pretty good combo with keep, to really win that one late. Obviously, not a card you want to get early. Um, anyways, just looking at what they've done, they both went with with a militia, um, to really go with that attack.
Let me see. If they open Urchin with Militia, that's actually fine. Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
believe that
Nerilika
was the
open
Nerilika Open was Urchin Militia.
Urchin Militia. That's okay. Not because like again, like Militia is not in its own right the most important card or anything here. The attack's not gonna hurt that much because you're perfectly fine buying like $2 cards like Peasant and Page. But Militia is an attack card, and so if you open with Urchin, the Militia can activate your Urchin and get you
Yep.
the Mercenary in the same way that a second Urchin can. So Militia Urchin is totally fine with the idea of getting early Mercenary.
And again, we see this kind of same thing we saw in game two, where they both got one cultist and haven't really been, but are not really committing to getting more.
Which is
Um,
weird because it like self synergizes really well and really obviously based on the card.
yeah, I think KHG's asking what you would open. Would you open the double urchin? You think over urchin militia?
Yeah, the 3/4 opening is tough. Um, hmm. Well, let me see what the 3/4 person. So the 3/4 person is player one, so they don't have the luxury of seeing what their opponent has or has opened.
Ooh, a bit
Um,
unfortunate there to draw their urchin dead. Not urchin there, a mercenary dead there.
yeah, yeah, that is a bad draw. Oh, and one other thing that I have not mentioned yet, but has repeatedly been occurring is buying islands. Island is really bad. It's the the awkwardness of island is it's 2 victory points, which you don't care about until the very end of the game. Early game victory points matter basically nothing, right? Because early game decisions that affect your deck's quality will lead you to score dozens more points down the road. And so the only thing you really care about for like turns 1 through like 8 or so is like what gets my deck going. And so it doesn't matter that Island has victory points in the early game. But Island's main function is trashing and help you set the cards aside. And trashing is the thing you want to do early. And so Island's got this sort of awkward, like, it's a card you would need to get early to use the trashing effect, but it's a card you don't care about until late. Now, as a trasher, Island is awful. Right? It trashes 1 card, it's terminal, you can only use it once. So it's like really, really, really bad at trashing. And the ostensible benefit is, oh, well, you can set aside points and score a lot of points, which you don't care about at the point where you use out. And you're looking at 2 very good trashers. Urchin, by extension Mercenary, and then Banish are both very good ways to get rid of your cards. And so getting Island here rather than getting either of those two, I think, is an enormous mistake.
Yeah, I mean they've both gone for it. I see there's already 5 islands gone. Um, do you see? It looks like that Dita's trying to play up some of those lines. Is up to the warrior. And I see Nerilika did the same. Uh,
Anyways, returning to this question of the 3/4 opening, um, I think
Banish is a
it's
better
not.
island on demand for the same money. That's a good point, KHZ.
Yeah, Banish is way better. Returning to the 3/4 opening, like double Urchin or even Urchin Militia is not unreasonable. I think that's fine. I think I like the idea of one of the travelers and Banish. Topher was suggesting Peasant Banish. I was thinking actually Page and then Banish on the $4 hand. You buy Banish and you set aside one of the estates. and then you've got a nice 10 card deck. And then if you see the page turn 3, you're really happy because you trigger a shuffle turn 4 and your treasure hunter is going to end up back in it. And even if you don't see the page turn 3, you can buy a peasant turn 3, and then when your page triggers a shuffle turn 4, you can at least get the peasant rolling quickly. I think that also potentially works. If maybe page banishes the opening.
I missed. Malo said, "Look at something." I'm trying to see what happened. Um,
I've seen that they bought a gold, which
Dita. So wait, Nero like discarded a mercenary somewhere. That seems interesting. They discarded a mercenary in a hand where they just left themselves with three. Uh, where they just left themselves with three terminals.
so their hand was militia, island, cultist, mercenary, merchant guilds, and they were getting attacked with a militia. What would you discard there?
I don't know.
I think it's hard to tell without knowing the exact deck state, but I'm assuming you keep the militia, play the militia, and then buy a $2 card.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
You
You're
could
right
also
though.
play the mercenary and just trash the island and the merchant guild because those cards are not worth being in the deck. But I expect
Yeah,
somebody who bought the island and the merchant guild probably values them more than I do and wouldn't want to
that is
trade them.
definitely true. You have to think about, there's that emotional attachment. Obviously, they thought there was a reason for getting them. I do think they both need to get to champion. I'm not sure how far along they are on that line right now. Um,
These decks are really unfocused.
I
Like
feel
they're
like
looking at Ditastrutt's hand. There, there's a jack of all trades that got there somehow, a druid and an island. None of those cards should even be in your deck. All of them.
I feel like that has
Well, I
been
mean,
a somewhat common theme of today's matches. Is just
yeah,
fairly unfocused decks. It seems like
yeah.
they're kind of just almost just kind of ad libbing it or winging it. They're not really thinking about it long term. It seems like they're just kind of like, oh, I have this, like, oh, this would be good, and I'm buying it without considering how it plays with the rest of the deck.
All right, now we have the next hand. We got a merchant guild, an island, and a hero. The, one of the things that I guess is really significant here is this is a mistake you can make early on is you can't just like click all the fancy actions in no particular order because a lot of the times you're going to get a deck where you've got like 3 actions in every hand and can only choose one of them and then 2 of them are being left unplayed, and that's particularly acute in this kingdom because at least early on there's no villages. There's two
Yeah,
good or three good villages here. You have champion, which is unlimited actions forever.
yeah,
You have disciple, which is like a throne room, which is a village, and you have teacher, which you could put plus action token on something and get like a village effect that way. But until you get into those, you're very limited on how many actions you can play. And so I would not be stuffing my deck full of every random action card imaginable because they're just going to bump into each other in your hand. And you're not going to
yep,
be able to play them. Now, there's a bunch of good action cards here, namely like mostly cultist, and you want to be playing those. But that's going to require you to get those actions first. And so the early game priority is I want to play my page a bunch. I want to play peasant a bunch. I want to get Finn so I can play them more often. And that's my main goal is play peasant and page a bunch, or play mercenary to get your deck thin, or play cultist to make your opponent's deck less thin. With the idea of you just want to beat your opponent to getting those like high value travelers because those are really really significant here.
yeah. And I
And
see.
their strategy does not seem oriented around that.
And then we had the classic new player, or less less skilled player get 8 by province line there from nerilika. Even use the coffer to get the province, but like
Yeah.
the thing is, I don't really see how their deck's gonna get to 8 consistently and moving forward. So I'd rather just have, it's better to have an action card now that's gonna help your deck get to 8 in a future turn than it is to, especially spending a coffer there to get to 8 to buy a province that's gonna be a stop card. So I think it's important to think about, like, even in kingdoms where you want to be getting early provinces, where maybe a single buy kingdom where that is a more viable option, you still want to be thinking about like, do I have a reliable enough deck now where if I get this province, I'm still able to get to 8 in future turns? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really rough draw with that cultist. Drew the mercenary and hero both dead, which and
Yeah,
especially
that's
right at
painful.
their, they did get both of them in the shuffle at least. If I'm looking at that right, so at least they didn't like draw those two as like the last card or whatever, and get it after the shuffle. But yes, you're right, Keiichi, that I think they could have looked at that and figured out what they had left, and noticed that they had a high risk of that. Um,
Now, something to note here is it's turn 21, and one of them has a champion and hasn't played it. The other one doesn't even have the champion yet. And it's partly because these decks are humongous. Like, Nerilika's got like a 25 card deck. I assume Ditastrutt's deck is a
yeah,
similar size. So, like, looking at this hero, right? Nerylika's going to play it this turn, and it's going to take like 3-ish more turns to even get through this deck. And that champion's going to be some. So it could be like 7 turns before Nerylika even finds the champion. And then we're at like turn 27. That's just so incredibly late. Most
yeah,
games should be ending like circa turn, I don't know, like 12 to 16, depending on kingdom quality. Um, and the reason these are taking so long is because those decks are thick, right? You see this hero in a deck with like 20 cards, most of which aren't draw cards.
and they didn't even
It's going
play
to
the
take you forever
hero.
to find the next step, right? That was, yeah. I don't know about that.
And I
If
think
you
there's
if you
a
get a thin deck fast with mercenary or banish, you get the peasant and page going early. You can have champion or teacher or whatever online by like turn 9 to turn 11,
yeah
and then
they
your deck just explodes from there.
no, you have a good point. Yeah, Keiichi, they did skip playing the hero. They wanted to play the mercenary instead to trash the 2 coppers. Which I mean, it is a good trash from the mercenary, but I do think getting the hero out would have been more important. Obviously, as we just talked about, to trying to get that champion as soon as we can. We already have going duchy, so we already have they're just going all victory points here.
I mean, we definitely entered the like abandon hope phase where it's too late to build a deck. At this point, you do just have to start greening.
I'm not sure, Keiichi. I have to go back and see what they had in their hand. Um, yeah, it probably would have got. They would have had 3 coppers, 2 silvers, yeah, and the hero. So yeah, they would have had it without having to use a coffer either. The greening started turn 3.
So looking at where the treasure split is, it looks like
Neuralic is up, I think, on at least 2 of them, I would think, because he's been consistently ahead from what I've noticed for a while.
Adita appears to be ahead on gold. 4-2.
Okay.
Um,
Yes, Neuralika did just buy a copper. I'm guessing they wanted to make sure they were winning they're winning the split. Oh, we do see the champion come out from Dita, so that I would think might be
so
enough to put them ahead in this game now.
I wasn't looking at the score, but that copper should have bumped up Nerilika in points, right?
I did not look at the
Yeah, I believe
score
it did.
either.
Because Nerilika trashed 2 coppers and has now bought 2 coppers. Um, and so I believe they're tied in coppers right now. And I don't know where silvers stand. They've gained a bunch of them.
I
So that'd be
believe
hard to
I'm
quickly
pretty
tell.
certain that Neuralika is ahead on the silvers. Just look at the victory point count. Especially if Dita's up on the golds, I would think Neuralika has to be up on
Yeah.
the silvers. I mean, Dita does have the champion out, which can definitely be a big advantage for them. I mean, I don't really know what Dita's gonna do to catch back up in this game. Down 12 here. Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
not sure where Nerilika got the lead. So Nerilika had what was theoretically a very good opening, but that's definitely not the reason. Because the reason Urchin and Militia is a good opening is because it makes you likely to get Mercenary.
yeah,
And we see, Nerilika did not manage to line up Urchin and Militia. They found one turn three, the other turn four. It's a little bit unfortunate, but not that unlikely. Um, Now, generally, what happens with Urchin is you buy Urchin and another attack card, usually just another Urchin, turn one or turn two.
that
And if you line it up,
that's. Sorry, I was just
what?
looking at Dita. It looks like basically a soft resign there. I mean, they spent two coffers to buy a province when they're down by 18 and leave only one left. I mean,
Yeah, that does seem losing. You want to be trying to like catch up via keep points. Um,
yeah,
Anyways, um, if you see the Urchin and the other attack, turn three or turn four, you're in a great position. You got an early mercenary, that's wonderful. If you didn't, often what you need to do is buy another Urchin to guarantee you find it turn five or turn six. You don't want to be going too long without getting mercenary in your deck. That's a key trash. That's what's going to get your deck rolling. And we saw, Dita, not Dita, Nerilika, um, that didn't manage to line them up. Turn three and turn four, and then rather than like adding another Urchin to their deck to increase the odds of activation, they bought a island and a merchant guild, two really weak cards, and then never really managed to get that mercenary until much later.
I mean, they did get the mercenary out, but I know they also drew a dead a few times. So yeah, I'm not sure where they did get ahead. I mean, I guess they just were able to get the provinces earlier, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe they had. I know they had the hero line going, so maybe they used some payload there. I'm not quite sure where their payload came from because I know we said Dita's also ahead on the golds. Um, I never realized until recently when I started doing some of this commentary just how much there is to keep track of. You think it should be easy to keep track of these things,
Oh no, yeah, there's a lot.
but it does look like Nerilika gets that one. So I believe that's 2-2 now on the match, if I counted correctly.
I'll check real fast.
Yeah, see, I can't even remember what the score of the last games is. That's how long it's been. Looks like we will have a couple minute break here. Yeah, you told me that last time, KG, when we were doing the other game, and I didn't quite believe you then, but I'm definitely close to believing you now.
I've checked. It is indeed 2-2.
Yep. I think it's fair. I think we've seen both of them definitely have some good plays here. I think that, but we've definitely seen both of them have sort of so a little more unconventional decks and a little unfocused decks. I think that's the main takeaway from me. For these players to improve is really just to try and have focus and a clearer vision of what the deck. Because I think at this level, like in general, the player that builds the better deck is gonna win. And you're right that a lot of those little decisions you were talking about will definitely make a difference when you start moving up. But I think at this level, like if you're building the right deck, it's generally gonna beat someone who just is really off on what they're building. Um,
Yeah.
so I think at this level, that's what I would really say. If as when they go back and watch these videos, is just start really thinking about okay, like what are you trying to do with this deck? And I guess an interesting question for you, something I've been thinking about some with like the team prep thing, is like when you see a kingdom, like what are you first looking to analyze in that kingdom? Like what are your first thoughts whenever you see a kingdom? Like are there like certain keys you're looking for? Are you looking, obviously you're looking for certain synergies once you play enough.
That's a good question. Um, I will say with a decent number of kingdoms, once you get a lot of experience, it just kind of comes naturally. Like you see a kingdom and your eyes just gravitate towards the things that are jumping out. Like in that kingdom, you see a few power cards like page and peasant, or like, oh, those are really obvious. Your eyes or gravitate towards those cultists and so forth. In general, if you're not already at the point where you're just like you look at the kingdom and like you can kind of tell where it's going. I think usually the most important things to look for are the key engine components. So see if there's sources of additional action. Are there villages? See if there's draw. See if there's
Yep.
plus buys. See if there's trashing. Because the absence of any of those will often substantially affect your gameplay. There can be amazing villages and buys and trashing, and if there's no draw, that can hamstring the ability to build or affect how you build. Or if there's no plus buy, you often need to be thinking about like, all right, if I'm just getting one card per turn, I should probably green sooner, that sort of thing. And so I'd say the easiest thing to look for is like actions by draw. Like here, there's no draw, right? So you can't build an engine.
I
Well,
guess
this
there's
caravan.
technically
Caravan's super
yeah, I
weak.
was gonna say,
Yeah,
but in terms of draw, it's
caravan's not
definitely very weak.
enough to like build a deck around.
Yeah, we also see
Like you got
another
phenomenal
keep
action
game.
with recruiter.
Yes.
You got plus buy with snowy village, but you can't get too big here.
I mean, I guess
Um,
recruiters technically draw too, but again, it's not a
no,
super
it's not.
strong draw.
Recruiter is draw neutral. Um, it says plus two
Oh, that's
cards,
true. We have to trash one.
but it
Yeah, yeah,
requires you to trash. So if you've got a 5 card hand that has recruiter in it,
that is
you
true.
play recruiter, then recruiter left your hand, you're down to 4. You draw a 2, you're up to 6. Now you trash one, back down to 5, and you end up just spinning. Now recruiter with fortress is actually draw. You could trash fortress and then you've increased your hand size. But in basically every other case, recruiter is not draw.
Yeah.
Yeah, opening Snowy Village is really bad.
Well,
There's no
we
reason to do
both
that.
did the same open of Plaza Snowy
That
Village.
is, oh, good. That is,
Yeah,
all right.
that does seem not.
Another another conversation to have. This is one of those things that just comes up in like every match. Don't buy golds. Don't buy provinces so early. Number 3, don't open with villages.
Yeah.
Plaza and Snowy Village are both quite good cards, just because villages in general are good cards. Most decks tend to need them. But villages are good because you have a bunch of actions already in your deck. Adding villages lets you play all those actions. Or specifically terminal actions. Terminal action being one that doesn't give you any plus action back. So like bureaucrat is terminal, count is terminal, gladiator is terminal, etc. These cards, you have count and a gladiator in the same hand, you couldn't play them both unless you had a plaza, unless you had a snowy village. If you have none of those cards in deck yet, if you have 0 terminal action cards, you just had one of them. You can't possibly need a village yet because you don't have any terminal action cards to collide with the village to resolve.
Yeah.
And so opening with a village is just like it's like passing your
And not
first 2
only they
turns. You're just
open
like,
with
I'm not going to improve my deck at all.
not only open with one village, but they both open with 2 villages, one of which doesn't synergize with
Yeah,
other villages. And
yeah,
you also have recruiter in this. I think that's even a stronger reason to not need open village because you want to be using recruiter to get a bunch of villagers early on as well.
yeah.
And they're just really going heavy on the plazas here, which I don't. I'm not sure I see where they're going with that. Yeah,
Nowhere.
and they just recruited a copper. Did they just recruit? Yeah. So Dita just recruited a copper and not an estate.
Yeah, so that's not a good idea. So firstly, for recruiter specifically, estate is worth 2, copper is worth 0. So if you trash the estate, you get 2 villagers from recruiter. If you trash the copper, you get nothing. But also, probably even more significantly, is that general point I was mentioning a bunch of games back, which is you generally want to trash your estates before you trash your coppers, if you have the choice. The estates are worse for your deck. They don't give you any money. If you trash your coppers first, you have a deck that's like full of estates, hitting very low price points. If you trash your estates first, your deck that's full of coppers, you're at least hitting like 5-ish. And so even if you had a card that was like entirely neutral on like what card you trash. Like church, for example, you can trash whatever card you want. You generally want to pick a state to trash before you pick copper, because they tend to be worse for your deck than coppers are most of the time.
So what? I guess what would you be opening if you don't like the village open here? What would you be opening? I mean, when I'm looking at this board, I'm seeing gladiator as a pretty strong open a lot of times. I mean, it's obviously worth 2 and often 3 in the opening if you could get a card your opponent doesn't have, and I think it's a card you want for payload here. Um,
Yeah, so 5/2 is pretty automatic. You just click recruiter. That card is
yeah,
really overpowered. On 3/4, 3/4 is a little bit less obvious. I think on 4, caravan or talisman. Probably caravan. I think I want to. What do I want to go with the caravan? Vassal, gladiator, or silver. Any of those is honestly kind of reasonable. I think caravan, vassal. Um, Honestly, like vassal, caravan. I'm sorry, not vassal, caravan. Vassal, silver, and gladiator are all going to be doing more or less the same thing for you turn 3 and turn 4, which is
yep.
giving you $2. So the choice between those three is not significant. The goal here is basically just to get to 5 and buy recruiter. I think early on to kick your deck off. Vassal
Yeah.
silver also is totally reasonable. Would not do vassal gladiator because
Yeah, no,
it's
because
glide you're
you
a
have
little
a
bit
step
sad.
colliding. I think that's true.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, I think
Um,
you generally are going to want, as you mentioned, recruiters, as you were saying it before this game, kind of looking for the power cards, right? We'd see here recruiter is definitely the power card that you're going to want here. So, um, I mean, so you're going to want to think, okay, what's going to get me to 5? And getting to 5 here is, the villages, as you mentioned, aren't going to help you get to 5. I mean, it did
yeah.
look like, I believe one of the players did get to 5 in that second draw, but it's definitely not nearly as likely. Um, Actually, no,
Yeah, that was
it
actually just
doesn't look like they
incredibly
got.
lucky from ditastrutt.
Did
So both Plaza and Snowy Village are kind of useless for hitting
oh
5.
yeah.
And so the odds that ditastrutt hit 5 on turn 3 are exactly as high as the odds that ditastrutt hit 5 on
What
turn 1 or turn 2,
did they
which
just
is 1
cash
in
in
6.
villages for nothing? I didn't see what happened there. Kid, she said they cashed in their villages.
They're villagers.
Yeah, their villagers, but I don't see how they did that.
No, they did. Look, so they played the Snowy Village, and then they used 2 villagers for no reason.
I didn't even know you could use villagers for no reason. I didn't even know it was possible to do that. If I'm being honest.
So here's the way this works. So villagers, this thing that recruiter gives, right? It's like a +1 action that you can play whenever you want, right? So um, you could recruiter is functioning like, imagine it was like when you trash an estate, you get +2 actions. But with the bonus that you can bank up those actions and use them for later. So that's like the general concept of villagers, is they're like a really flexible source of plus action. Now, Snowy Village, it has this clause that's just like no more plus action for the rest of this turn at the end. And the way that interacts with villagers is this. If you play a Snowy Village and then play a recruiter, you can still get those villagers. Because it's not technically plus action, even though they function like that.
Yeah.
Plus villager is not the same thing as plus action. So you could play a Snowy Village, play a recruiter, and still get villagers. But you can't spin those villagers after the Snowy Village has been played, because the villagers, which attempt to give you plus action, would fail the Snowy Village. Right? So if I play a Snowy Village and then try to spin villagers later in my turn, the villagers wouldn't give me any plus action. So Snowy Village doesn't shut down your ability to gain villagers for the rest of the turn, but it shuts down your ability to use villagers
Huh.
for the
I
rest of
don't
the
think
turn.
I actually ever realized that. But I'm still
Yeah,
a little confused. It says they just use the 2 villagers, but it doesn't say what they use
we're
them
getting
on.
there. Yeah. So the way this works is you're technically allowed to spin villagers whenever you want during the action phase. So like you could decide at any arbitrary point in the action phase at all, I'm using my villagers now. And so when you play Snowy Village, there's actually a brief point where you specifically might want to spin villagers at a weird time. So DZ is explaining this in the chat right now as well, which is when you play Snowy Village, cards are resolved from the
Huh.
top to the bottom. So you do the +1 card part of Snowy Village first, then you do the +4 actions part, then you do the +1 buy part, then you do the ignore any more actions, right? So for Snowy Village specifically, you might draw a card that's relevant. Like what if you draw like a Smithy with Snowy
Coldest,
Village,
yeah.
right? Right? Yeah, a Coldest, whatever. Like you draw a draw card, you're like, oh, I've got a draw card in my hand now. I'm probably going to draw a bunch of cards and need a bunch of villagers, right? You can technically spin your villagers during the middle of the Snowy Village play, between the +1 card and then the ignore any plus actions, whatever. And so when you play a Snowy Village and you have villagers, the game is going to prompt you. To be like, do you want to spin villagers right now? Because this technically at the last point in the turn we are allowed to do that. And so it's
Okay.
specifically giving that an option where it's just like, would you like to spin villagers before you're shut off from spinning them? And the reason it prompts you with Snowy Village is because normally it just waits until you play the action, like, oh, you obviously want to
Yeah,
spin a
that's what
villager
I
when you play
thought.
your action, not otherwise. But with Snowy Village, you might need to get those villagers, like spin them early before you're shut off from spinning them if you know you have a bunch of actions coming up. Now, the reason that didn't make any sense is because Snowy Village also gives +4 action, right? So you only want to spend villagers
If
at
you're getting
that
a
point in
lot
time
of actions.
if you're expecting more than 4 actions coming up, which is obviously not possible in their decks, which only has like 4 actions at that point.
I mean, yeah, at that point, I mean, disaster.
Yeah,
Dita did hit that this turn with a transmute that they couldn't even play.
yeah.
Um,
So for whatever reason, it prompted her to spin villagers, and she's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll spin all my villagers right now, even though there's no reason to."
anyways, going back to the game, it's hard to see what's been going on. Yeah. No, I didn't even think about that whole aspect of when the villagers could be played. There's so many little interactions that you just like don't really consider, and the client does a really good job of spelling those out. You know. So let's see. I see that nerilika did eventually go the caravan draw, which I think is probably a thing we're gonna want here. Um, now
Yeah,
they're going a
actually, kind of
potion.
like talisman here, just in general, because I mean, you want to get recruiter early because recruiter is really strong. But after that, most of the cards I want cost like 3 and 4. Like I'd love to just take a bunch of vassals and caravans, I think. And I could totally see getting a talisman for vassals and caravans. The other thing that makes that significant is keep is around. And so that talisman's worth 5 points on its own and will help me get silvers and potions later, which will also give me additional 5 points each.
That is a good point. Yeah, I think whenever there's alternate treasure cards, it definitely is can be really big with keep. So I think you have a very good point that talisman is overlooked here. So yeah, I mean it definitely looks like Dito went pretty heavy on the snowy villages and the plazas. Um,
And transmute. So yeah, time to talk about transmute. Transmute is one of the worst cards in the game. I think probably second worst after Philosopher's Stone. If I had to rank them,
worse than what's the
really,
other one?
really, really
Harvest.
bad.
I think that's the one I've always seen is
Harvest is also in contention. I think bottom three is gotta, or bottom four is probably like Navigator, Harvest, Transmute, Philosopher's Stone in ascending order of badness. Um, Now, Peastone is actually Peastone in this kingdom specifically would be way better than Transmute just because of keep. But in every other context, Philosopher's Stone is so terrible, so terrible. Um,
back to transmute since it's actually in this set.
yeah, so Transmute, it's so bad. This is one of those cards like I try to make it work and I always get punished for it every single time. It's like I see it and I'm like I want to make Transmute work this time, and it never does. It just never ever does.
Yeah, I mean
So it's a trasher,
those are cards I
right?
just know are bad, so I've just never even tried playing with
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So Transmute is an attempt to trash cards. Here's the problems. Firstly, you want trashers early. It's hard to get Transmute early because you first have to get a potion and draw the potion, then buy the transmute, then draw the transmute before you even play it once. So it's really slow to get going. Trashing cards is the thing you want to get going as quickly as possible. So off the bat, having to get a potion first and then get the card is just really bad for a card that wants to be played early in the game.
So now they
Secondly,
have a transmute and they don't even play it.
yeah. So secondly is it's they couldn't because they played Snowy Village, and I assume they didn't spend any
It said
villages
they
there.
still had 2 actions, I thought.
Oh, did they?
I'm not sure how they would have still had 2 actions, but it did say 2 actions on the client.
Pretty sure they did. I'm saying they. Oh, maybe they because they played the Plaza.
Yeah, they played the plaza
You
first.
might be right. Yeah, they had 2 actions left. Anyways, secondly, it doesn't actually make your deck any thinner, right? It trashes one card, it just replaces it with another card. You trash an action, you get a duchy. You trash a treasure, you get a transmute. You trash a victory card, you get a gold. Your deck's never getting any thinner. So it's not even doing anything it's supposed to do because it doesn't actually thin your deck. It just replaces one stop card with another stop card. Like turning a space into gold, for example, we already said gold is not good at making your deck thin. And then lastly, it's terminal and only trashes one card at a time. So it's really hard to you can't take a bunch of them, and if you do, you can't play a bunch of them. And so it's really really bad at even if you had the transmute, even if it didn't actually trash cards, it's really hard to trash a bunch of cards at once. Good trashers either trash a bunch of cards like Chapel, just trashes a bunch, or Steward can trash 2 at a time, or Remake trashes 2 at a time, or they trash one and do a bunch for you. So Recruiter trashes, but it also draws and gives you villages, or Spice Merchant trashes and gives you action and draw, that sort of thing. Transmute is really, 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 really bad.
Yeah, no, like I said, I don't think I've ever really tried playing just because I know in general it's bad, and so I just kind of avoid it. The only case I could maybe see where I'd pick one up is if I had a game with another potion card that's actually good, and then I didn't happen to have enough to pick up the other card. Then maybe I'd think, okay, at that point, is it worth getting a transmute? But yeah, I agree that it doesn't really help much. Anyways, I mean, I think it looks like from what I'm seeing here that nerilika is pretty far ahead on this game. I mean, they've got the caravan draw, which just seems very good here. Um, and I believe nerilika is ahead on most of the keep points because I think they each have one province, so that would put nerilika probably ahead on 2 out of the 3, so probably golds and silvers maybe. Maybe coppers, I'm not sure.
Let's do another caravan. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think caravan draw just makes sense here. Um, but I think it's interesting that both of them got a lot of villages and then didn't get, either of the payload cards in Gladiator or Vassal. It seems like those are cards. I mean, I guess what, a Vassal could help you get an extra card because you could potentially play an extra action card, so it potentially could at least get you the card back in the draw. DC apparently has some issues with the Dominion game design. I mean, I agree. I think game design is very fascinating, and I think obviously in any game with the size of Dominion with this many cards, there are definitely going to be some cards that are, designed poorly. If you're interested in
Well,
game design,
specifically, this is from Alchemy, which is just the worst expansion by a long shot. It's
yeah,
it's the black sheep of the family. If you read Donald X's own review of the expansions and which ones he thinks are best and worst and which ones he recommends, he's like, Alchemy's the bad one. Don't get that one unless you really want it, and only after getting all the other ones.
yeah,
It was one of the earlier ones, and I think was kind of rushed, and it did, a lot of the cards are bad. Transmute being one of those ones. The newer expansions, I think, have a lot fewer dud cards. I don't think there's any cards in Renaissance or Menagerie, the last 2 expansions. Maybe even Nocturne, where you're just this card is unplayable in transmute style.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know which cards come from which expansions. I mean, I have the game with a couple expansions, that I got a while ago, and I've played it off and on, but didn't really play it too much until started quarantine when I started playing the online version more. So like, I just learned all the cards at once essentially, or like half the cards. So there wasn't a lot of like, oh, this is this expansion. Like I think I did the dual set tournament like shortly after I started. I was like pretty much randomly picking sets because I'm like, I don't even know what cards are in these sets.
Yeah, so responding in chat, the the worst card in Renaissance is definitely, yeah, it's villain, which even then, like, it's not a good card, but it's like so far above transmute and philosopher's stone that it's like not even close. Renaissance doesn't really have much of like a bottom. All the cards in there are pretty good for the most part. But now you just have gatekeeper, which is really weak. But I will have you know, I got a gatekeeper today, in the game. Two of them, in fact. Like when I return.
Yeah, I mean, I've never quite got the hit of Gatekeeper the same way as some of the other cards. Like, I mean, I agree it's not a great card, but I feel like there's definitely, it seems like there are a lot more decks where Gatekeeper is viable than decks where Transmute is viable, for example.
Yes.
Like, I don't think Gatekeeper's ever going to be a great card, but I could see it being a passable card in a decent number of kingdoms, at least compared to some of those other kind of, very bottom tier cards.
Yeah, the true bottom tier is much lower. In fact, I'll pull it up right now. I'll tell you what the bottom tier cards are. Um,
Yeah, I think it's I'm already blanking on the name, but the one where you like the one that costs I know I'm just blanking on the name, but the one where you get like one coin, you get up to like 4 coins or something, and it costs 5, and it's like I should know what it is, but
you get
Harvest. There we
four
go. There
coins.
we go. Harvest.
Harvest. Oh yeah, we
I don't even
mentioned
really know
Harvest
what it
a second
does
ago.
because I've like literally never bought it.
Yeah, Harvest is in like the bottom of the bottom. I think the bottom four are Navigator, Harvest, Transmute, and Philosopher's Stone. Other ones down there are Cash, which is like a gold that comes with 2 coppers.
Yep.
So basically 3 junk cards for 5. There is, which is just like a really bad terminal silver with like an attack that's often friendly. There's Royal
Yep.
Seal. I also got Royal Seal today, actually.
I don't think Royal Seal's down on that level. I mean, it's not great, but there are definitely decks where being able to top deck a card is good.
Yeah. Bureaucrat, which we see in the current kingdom, and we saw earlier, is
Trader's
down
up
there
there
in the
too, I
bottom.
think. Trader's similar. I mean, Trader has a little more use cases, but I've never found very many kingdoms where Trader is good.
Trader's pretty weak.
I mean,
It's
Trader is good in the
20th out
kingdoms
of
where Trader
360.
is viable. I think Trader's much better, but I think Trader just has so few kingdoms, in my opinion, where it's really good. Or I've at least never come across them. But yes, I agree. It's probably better. It is better than the other ones we've named.
Anyways, where are we at now? It's actually looking like a pretty close game.
Yeah, it did end up closer. That is true. Feodum does make Trader quite strong.
Why? Why are pawns at 3?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel
I'm
like I'm not
confused.
sure I really would have ever, and especially because what terminal actions do either of them have?
Yeah, let's play count the terminals again. I count
Two
3.
with
There's 3 transmutes
oh,
total
I mean two
among both
recruiters.
players.
Recruiters are terminal, so you
Recruiter's
technically
a
should count.
village. No, Recruiter's opposite a terminal.
I mean,
Recruiter gives you
yes,
villages.
yes, it gives you villages, so you're right. But I mean, technically, I
Yes.
think it would be a terminal because if you trash a copper with it, you don't get anything. But I agree that yeah, like what is? I mean, yeah, okay, you're getting coffers from plazas, but like,
Yeah,
which is
so
weird because I feel
so
like the last games they completely over terminaled, so they like swung from one direction to the other this game.
yeah, they've gone from all the terminals and none of the villages to all the villages and none of the terminals. Um, had nightmares of the previous game have caused them to overcompensate.
I
And
wonder
in
if
all
they've
this,
been
the
tracking
snowy
the keep
villages.
points.
Let me see what the plaza split is.
I mean, it's pretty even. I think they've both got at least a couple of them.
It's 4-3 Adidas' favor. So Dita has 4 plazas, 2 snowy villages, and 10 villagers. So like Dita's deck right now could play one, five, oh goodness,
Like,
eight,
yeah, a lot of
18
actions.
action, 18 terminal action cards.
And
She
they
has
have one.
three,
I think they
three
trashed the
transmutes, right?
transmutes.
Have they trashed
The
the
transmutes
transmutes?
are
Oh,
in
you're
the
right. They have
trash.
one. So there's one terminal action card in the whole deck, which you could play with your normal +1 action that you get every turn. Now contrast with nerilika, who could only play
And yet there's been
13
turns where
terminal
Dita literally
cards.
can't. There've been turns where Dita literally can't play actions because of the Snowy Village. So there's been turns where they've been able to play 18 actions, but they haven't been able to play any because of the Snowy Village.
Nerilika can only play 13 terminal actions with the 6 villagers, 3 plazas, and a snowy, but has 0 terminal action cards in the entire deck.
Sorry, sorry to, if you're listening, we're being a little harsh here, Dita and Neuralika. I hope it does help, and I think Daniel's did a good job explaining some of these too, and I think it's definitely a learning process, and the easiest way is just to play, right? Like, I found when I was just jumping in, I just found these ways just play, and eventually you play enough, and you see someone do something, and it works out, and then you try that same thing on a different game, and it doesn't work, and then you sit back and say, okay, why did it not work, right? So, like, you have to think about, okay, if you see someone do an engine, and then you try and replicate it, but it doesn't work, think about what makes that engine different, right? I know a good example that I always think about, like Horn of Plenty, right? Like, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that card's really good. I saw someone pull off a really cool combo, and the next game I go and try to do it, and I realize I have 0 draw in the deck. So I'm just like, I can't do anything with the horns because I don't have enough draw to play enough cards. And so then, that's when you then realize, like, okay, you have to think about what allows the card to be successful.
Yeah, Horn of Plenty is one of those cards where, like, if you watch good players play, you'll see them get it like almost every time it shows up because it's so strong. But it's only so strong in a good engine, which just so happens that you're going to be seeing most of the time if you watch good people play.
Yeah.
And so you might not correctly infer, like, oh, they're getting it because of these other things that support it and so forth.
Yep. Also,
I guess conversely, you might watch a game where, like, you saw the good players buy a bunch of plazas, but because they're building a big engine that needed a bunch of villages and had a bunch of other action cards. And then if you just buy the plaza part of that and don't realize that they're buying the plazas because the other action cards are in their deck.
So just going back and looking at this game and something else I just thought about, there's Keep and there's still Talesman sitting at 10. And that's a treasure card that's worth, all of those Keep victory points. That's 5 victory points. It's literally sitting there for either of them to take. Right? You could take a Talesman there and you're getting more victory points than getting the Duchy.
Yeah, they bought 7 3-point duchies, passing up the 5 victory point 4-cost cards.
And I mean, it's a game where those points are going to be relevant. I mean, it's a very even game. And KHG points out, yeah, there are potions in the trash as well.
Yeah, the all the potions here are super significant. Like, the 5 victory points is a bunch here, and the kingdom is not super strong. I'd contest like every treasure pile. So maybe copper. I'd probably give up on copper.
The question is, will Nerilika be able to hit 8 and get a province here? Does not look like it. So now are they going to see the Talesman here?
I don't even think I'd buy province if I could. I think you buy Talisman here. Don't let the gold buy. It doesn't affect the score.
I guess do they not realize? I mean, I guess it's possible. Maybe it's if they're new and they haven't seen Keep before, maybe it's possible they don't realize that Keep applies to Talesman as a kingdom card instead of one of the traditional treasures. I mean, I guess it's definitely possible. Oh yeah, Dito said they've mostly played with silver expansion, so probably isn't familiar with a lot of the cards. And I guess this gets to kind of the. I know there was a big debate the last league hall about sort of whether it makes sense with the new sort of card pools coming out, whether it makes sense to start restricting the or not restricting, but at least giving the option for lower tier players to have to play with different tier pools. Crabcat basically silver expansion, silver subscription is like it's like a half subscription, so it's like half the price, and I think it only comes with some of the expansions. I wouldn't know which expansions it comes with because I don't even know what cards are from different expansions. Um, but yeah, I guess that's an interesting discussion of sort of whether it would make sense at the J and maybe up to I or maybe even H levels, whether it would make sense to restrict by card pool. I know there was some relatively some relatively lively debate about that at the last town hall. Um,
Yeah, I have a strong opinion on like league rules wise, whether on the one hand you're helping players who
oh,
are like
Dita
newer. On the
does
other hand,
pull out the
you're
win.
punishing players who have all the expansions and want to take advantage of it. That being said, um, given the situation we have and the expansions we are playing with, the thing I would say is I would take more time at the beginning of the game, right? Like I, you can be in the situations where you don't know all the cards, and the first thing I'd be doing is I'd be reading all the cards and thinking about overarching strategy. And if you don't know cards, you're spending a lot longer doing that. Like for me, it often
Yep.
takes like a few seconds to figure out where the kingdom's going with because I already know all the cards and how they
Yeah.
interact. But if you don't, you sort of have to, you have to like consciously sit down and read the cards and figure out what your strategy is. And like if you're new to the game, that process can take a few minutes. Like I think it'd be reasonable to take 3 to 5 minutes even before turn one
Yeah.
in a situation like this,
And
um,
and I know
and think it through.
there was a debate on the in one of the threads today about the timer and stuff again. And I mean, I brought up that same point of like, I mean, I'm definitely at that level where I have to, or I like to spend some time at the beginning and look at the kingdom. And I feel like if I do that, it actually saves time on a lot of my future decisions. But
Yeah.
anyways, let's look at what's on the new kingdom. We do see a third page board here. We also see rebuild, which can be a really interesting card at low levels because I think it can definitely be a card that I feel like if you see it once or twice and see it effectively, I know I'm very guilty of this. You just go straight for rebuild. I had that happen in my league match in H League the other day, where like I think we had we might even had three rebuild kingdoms, and I think one game like he definitely rushed them pretty fast. One game like we both played them pretty quick, and so it's definitely an
Yeah. So
interesting
let's talk
card
about
here.
rebuild for a second. First off, rebuild is the wrong answer to this kingdom. It's definitely very much the wrong answer, but one that I could definitely see winning at lower levels. Um, Here's the classic rebuild strategy to be aware of: is you open like two things that give you some money. Like here, probably like militia silver or tournament silver. Or if you didn't have those around, you could use double silver. You just like open double silvers, and then you buy some rebuilds. Usually want like two or three of them. I think often like just two if your opponent's going to rebuild as well, three if they're not. Basically, you get some rebuilds, and then you just play the rebuilds, and you turn your states into duchies and your duchies into provinces. And then after you've got the number of rebuilds you want, you buy some duchies. And then your goal is basically just going to be to get the provinces emptied quickly. So, A, don't buy estates. This is a mistake people have when they're
Yep.
playing rebuild. It's like, oh, I want to put more states in my deck. That slows down the game. It's okay at duchies because turning a duchy into a province takes as many rebuild plays as turning a province into a province. But turning an estate into a province takes two plays of rebuild, which slows you down. So never add extra estates beyond the ones you already have. And then secondly, with it's totally okay to trash provinces and game provinces again.
Yep.
Because rebuild, its advantage is kind of like a rush, right? It doesn't go anywhere long term. It's not a deck that stands up over the long term. It just tries to end the game fast before the opponent can catch up. And so your goal is to usually have like 3 or 4 provinces and then just like trash the rest of the provinces so the game ends
Yep.
really fast. And that strategy of just like click a few silvers, click a few rebuilds, maybe buy like a duchy or two, drain the provinces. is like it's reliably pretty good. And so it's occasionally the best strategy in the kingdom. I definitely play rebuild sometimes as well. But if you're only pretty good, it's going to be the best strategy a lot of the time at that level because it's very easy to do well.
Exactly.
And so if you're anywhere below like, I don't know, 50 or 55 or so, rebuild is just like crushing most of the time. Just do that little thingy and you'll win most of the time. Now, once you get beyond that, rebuild starts to get really weak because usually you can outplay it. Like here, this kingdom's more than strong to beat rebuild, but it takes like a very good command of the deck to do well enough to beat rebuild, I think.
Yeah. So just going back to what they did this game, it looks like they both opened silver tournament. What are your thoughts on that open here? Are you looking to open, are you,
Silver sounds terrible to me.
yeah, I mean, it seems to me like even if you just want the money, I mean, A, there's the page line, so obviously that has to be in discussion. But I think even if you just want money, I feel like militia is just a much stronger opening than silver. I don't think you're too worried about. I mean, I guess you do have to be worried about terminals a little bit here. There isn't really any villages, so I guess that is a consideration. I mean, obviously, if you get page up to champion, then it won't be anymore. Um, but
Yeah, so the various things going on here. Tournament silver is the opening that would scream to me like I'm trying to hit 5, right? Because it like the only reason you'd add payload in the early game, like adding a silver or a tournament, is to get you to 5.
yep.
And that's often a thing to do here. And there's good 5s here, so you could reasonably be like, I want to get to junk dealer to trash. I want to get to wharf because it's like excellent draw. But there's desperation in this kingdom, which allows you to just get 5 immediately. So, for example, if your goal is just like I want to get junk dealer, you can just open with junk dealer. Just click desperation buy junk dealer. That'd be fine. Alternatively, you could trash directly with exorcist, which is also totally fine. I think there's a lot of openings here. I think desperation for junk dealer, desperation for wharf, just page exorcist. Those there's a lot of good options here.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it doesn't look like either one is going rebuild here, so we are going to see some attempts at engines to be built. I mean, they both go with junk dealers, which is, I mean, I think junk dealer is a pretty solid card in this kingdom, especially with Tomb giving you the extra victory points.
What did they buy? Okay, so there's a lot going on here that's mistaken. So we saw a last game that had Page in it. They've had a bunch of games with Page in it. This is the Page game.
Yeah.
The first game with Page in it, we saw both like snap open Page Priest, and that's a good opening. Like get Page early and play the Priest and trash. Definitely the right game plan. That being said, that kingdom we were contemplating maybe delay Page because there's other good stuff in the short term going on, like Artificer Sheepdog. Now, this kingdom, I think I'm much more strongly inclined to say definitely open with the Page. Don't like delay it a turn or two. Yeah. Because here we've got a kingdom that's going to be very strong. Wharf and Hunting Grounds are both phenomenal draw, but they're both terminal.
And right? So you make them with terminal with champion.
Yeah, you fill your deck with a bunch of Hunting Grounds like they are here. You can't play them all. Now, League is having to trash one of the Hunting Grounds. I don't know why they're trashing. They don't have to, but they did. And taking 3. Why did you take that? I'm so confused. Why did they put 3 estates in their deck?
I guess they're just hoping to trash the 3 estates with junk dealers and just gain the 2 victory points. I mean, that is my thought on why they would want to do that. But then they trash Hunting Grounds just to go and gain another one back. So essentially, all they did with this turn was gain 3 estates.
Your deck, like, if they have junk cards, I could maybe see putting more junk cards in your deck to trash, because, yeah, it's points. The deck is still full of junk. Anyway, to the point, right? Wharf and Hunting Grounds are phenomenal draw, but they're terminal, so you can't play a bunch of them until you have Champion in play, which allows you to play all the wharfs and hunting grounds you ever want, and then your deck is going to be incredibly strong. And so these decks are going to go from like 0 to 100 really fast the moment a champion gets played. And so the number one priority here, I think, is just play the page line early and often.
Yep.
Only need the one page, but you want to get that page up to champion as soon as you can.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there isn't. It doesn't look to me like there's any clear, easy way to do that here. Like, there's nothing that synergizes super well to get that out quicker. So I do think that would be a little bit of an interesting, what's the fastest way to get the page line up, would be an interesting, and you definitely would. This would be a kingdom.
Wharf Exo Junk Dealer.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways. That is true, but like, there's all of those are terminal, right? So like, if you
Only
happen
one
to
of those is
draw it,
terminal.
I mean, yeah, Wharf is. Um,
Basically, you want to trash, and that can be Exorcist and or Junk Dealer, and then Wharf is good draw. And I'd just be playing with some of those cards until I got to Champion, and then I'd be taking Wharfs and Hunting Grounds like there's no tomorrow.
yep.
I'm still curious about the opening. Like Page Exorcist is the like really obvious thing to do, but I definitely can see Desperation Junk Dealer, Desperation Wharf fitting in there. Um, I think I like Page Exorcist still, and then Desperation for Junk Dealer maybe on the next turn if you don't, or you're probably not gonna hit 5. So like plan to Desperation Junk Dealer like turn 3 or turn 4, maybe both even. Or maybe like Page Exo in the opening, and then Desperation Junk Dealer, Desperation Wharf on turn 3 and turn 4. Or maybe Page Desperation for Junk Dealer as your turn 1 and turn 2, and then pick up Wharf and Exorcist turn 3 and turn 4. Some combination of these things. The exact
Yeah.
order is tricky, but like those are the cards I'm looking at.
No, I agree. And because you have a reasonably good like curse trasher and junk dealer in the tomb, like getting rid of the curses isn't a huge deal here. Um, Distrust's a little confused about the giant token. Not
It
sure.
definitely did flip. I'm not sure what she's expecting.
Yeah, I don't know.
All on all three of these plays, the token definitely flipped.
Yeah. So the other question is anyone going to collide? I believe do they each have one province, so it'll be interesting to see if either of them can collide the tournament with the province soon. Ooh, that's a bit of a nerilika with a pretty unfortunate hunting grounds draw there. And I believe
Yep.
one of them, I mean, Dita's definitely the one going up the page, is going up the page run. Right? I don't believe nerilika's bought any page at any point. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, this page is much too late to matter.
did they get another one recently? I didn't see. Yeah, you're saying by now there's no point in buying one if you haven't already.
I'm saying the point where they bought one as well. They yeah, they got that page on turn 10.
I didn't see it was quite that late.
Yeah, it was really late. Like here definitely open page. Sometimes you can delay page until like turn 3, turn 4, or whatever. But like turn 10 is way beyond the pale.
Yeah, because it just takes a while to build up, and especially as you mentioned in that other game with the traveling lines, that like once your deck gets bigger, then it's just gonna take even longer, right? So if you buy it turn 1, then maybe you're all the way up the line by turn 10. But if you buy it turn 10, it's gonna take 15 or 20 turns to get through it, because you just have so many more cards in your deck to get through.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you have a good point there, Nerdbound. That again, it's the classic. Oh, I have to spend all of my money, so therefore I have 3, and I have to buy something that costs 3. And silver's the only card that costs 3, so therefore I'm buying silver. Um,
Yeah.
and this is just, I mean, I see nerilika, it just feels like they're always drawing terminals dead in this game. The opposite of last game where it felt like, they had all these villages and never could play the terminals. They need some of those villagers from last game, and they need to carry them over to this game.
Yeah, like they're very bad. If you look at the map as a whole, they're very bad in the number of villages and terminal action cards they've
It's
got.
just, yeah, it's just each individual game is a little off balance. And they're already to the point of buying. I mean, I guess you're late enough in the game, you need to start buying duchies here. I mean, it's what's interesting. We've had a lot of really close games in this match. Like I think almost every game has come right down to the wire. So it is kind of interesting to see that, like, because I feel like sometimes these lower level games, I see a lot more blowouts where I see like one person finds a strategy that's closer to the right strategy, or is a decent strategy in a kingdom, and one player is just kind of floundering. But it feels like both players have gone for actually pretty similar builds. Like I can't think of too many games they've gone for really different build types and archetypes as a whole. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that is a point, DZ, that they're somewhat close just because they're long, so they're just at the point. Um, but I do think at least it is always more interesting to have competitive matches, and it looks like if Neuralink can hold this one off, that it'll end up as a 3-3 split.
I mean, this is looking good for nerilika. They've got a bunch of junk dealers, and they're playing them often.
So I did see. I don't
Um,
know when they got. Looks like they just got the first tournament one, and they picked up the followers. Um, I'm not actually that familiar with tournament enough to know like which of the cards you usually are wanting with the tournament.
Good question. So tournament, I'm well. First, I'm just going to rant about tournament because I hate tournament.
I know it's. I
Um,
think is it? It's like the second or third most banned card, is it not? I believe it's up
it,
there.
it it's got to be up there. Tournament's one of those cards that I would ban if I had room on my ban list. At the moment, it's only on the dislike list, so I have to see it. Only 50% as often as usual, but that's 50% too much. Tournament's big problem is like it's a strong card for sure, but there's a bunch of prizes. Often one or two of them are like really significant in the kingdom, and so whoever gets that often has a huge advantage. This kingdom, not so much because there's a bunch of other strong stuff going on, but in a lot of kingdoms, like getting followers or getting trusty steed or getting princess is really game defining. And it also has this problem of it forces you to do like weird stuff early, like buying early provinces, which is normally terrible. We were talking about that earlier. And
Yep.
tournament like encourages you to do that. So it leads to like awkward gameplay rewards you for doing something that's like otherwise really bad for your deck. And then you're kind of hoping that it pays off and you line up the province for the tournament. It's just like bad, very random gameplay. So I dislike it a lot. It rewards randomness and poor strategy.
Yeah, I
Now, to
mean,
answer your question directly, of like which prices are good, there's three that are much better than the other two. The three act on I was about to say the three actions. There's four actions. The three that are good are Trusty Steed, Princess, and Followers.
yep.
Those three are all pretty strong. Which one's strongest depends a bit on the kingdom, but in general, Followers I'd say is the number one more often than not. Usually, I'd say Followers is the best. Trusty Steed and Princess are second best, depending. And then Diadem and Bag of Gold are just like distant fourth and fifth. Um, and Duchies are down there with Bag of Gold and Diadem usually. I'd say Duchies probably like above Diadem and Bag of Gold, but well below the rest. Um, and so yeah, often like you get to followers, and then you got a discard attack and a junking attack, and that like hurts a ton. And they shut down their deck, and they can't do anything. Um, Now sometimes you get in a situation where like you want followers, but you got tournament early, and so you pick up the trustee seed earlier to cycle through your deck and hope to get back around to province again to gain followers. So sometimes you get trustee seed
Ooh,
first anyway, even if it's weaker in the abstract,
we do see
because
the
it makes you more likely
champion.
to get the second
We
one.
do see the champion finally come out here. Yeah, it turned 22 as DZ notes. I don't know if it will be enough. I think Nerilika has to be trying to look for that pile out with the tournaments at this point. Um,
It is a
And
little wild
now
being
they
this is
just
a
took
22 turn
actions with the
game.
trusty steed. They just gained +2 actions.
Oh, oh no! Oh no! Oh
Oh, that's
no!
unfortunate.
So so champion gives you unlimited actions.
Yeah.
Ditastrutt will never need plus action again. Taking +2 actions
I
there
mean, I guess in an
does
abstract,
nothing.
and they bought a gold, so they could have gotten a province there if they'd just taken +2 money instead of +2
They
action.
they passed up on the
So
free
they passed
province
up on a
by.
province to buy a gold and to get 2
Oh
actions that they didn't
man,
need. And that
that's
might be
painful.
the
That's
difference.
real pain. That could be the game defining move.
And then nerilika, what did they do? They didn't even buy anything, did they? No, they just got victory points from trashing.
It's nearly because they could have bought tournament in that last turn. Like if they trashed a duchy to buy tournament, that'd be threatening the game.
Yeah, they would have been able to end the
Um,
game there and win.
yeah. So for context, rebuild I think usually takes what like 13 to 14 turns, give or take, somewhere
That
around
sounds
there.
about right. Yeah,
Um,
and that's why
now
it's so
obviously like
strong. That's why it's so strong at this level because like most
yeah
people aren't capable of building an engine on a board like this to win at this level. You know, at this like, I mean, even I would feel like. I mean, I feel like I'm just getting to the point where I feel like I would look at this board and hope I could beat rebuild with an engine. But like at
yeah
at the J level, they're probably not experienced enough with engine building. And I mean, I think both of them have noted that these are some new expansions that maybe they've never even seen some of these cards, and so their ability to build a strong enough engine to beat rebuild here is not really there. And so I think rebuild would have won obviously in this setting, which is why so many like newer players like rebuild a lot because as you mentioned earlier,
yeah like
it's a
if
fairly
you want to think
safe
of a bad
and
habit that
easy
will win you a lot of
strategy.
games for the short term, just learn how to do the rebuild thing, and like you'll win a bunch of games with it, and you'll eventually have to unlearn that to get good. But in the short term, you'll win a bunch of games if you learn how to do rebuild well.
I mean, I
Because
don't think you'll
yeah,
really have to unlearn it because it's not like it's like you just don't go. You just learn when to do it and when not to do it.
yeah, you have to learn not to do it anymore, basically. Um, but yeah, like if you do the rebuild thing here, ends the game in like 15ish turns, and like that's enough, obviously, even with like bad draws to beat these 25 turn decks. That being said, I look at this game and I would never in a million years play rebuild. The engine, I think, if built appropriately, would slaughter it.
Oh yeah, they could have KHG's. Yeah, there was a way to win. They could have gotten 2 tournaments there. I think.
Yeah, so there's something else I guess to talk about briefly is 3 pile endings. You know, there's 2 ways the game can end. One is emptying provinces. The other is if any 3 piles at all empty, and the game also ends. And I noticed if you watch like J League matches, the games end on province endings a lot, like a lot,
Yeah.
like 80% plus of the time. And I think it's just because that's the nature of big money decks for the most part. Like the type of decks we see here, where they just like the decks never really get clean. You never really draw the whole deck. You're just like putting a bunch of golds in it and then buying provinces one at a time. The piles are rarely low enough for that to matter. You're never going to have 3 empty piles before you have 1 province pile empty, and then the game is the provinces. But you can end the game with 3 piles, and here we see that there's 2 piles empty already. If they bought the tournaments out, they already had a points lead. That would have ended the game, and they'd have won that way. Not even win anyway.
Yeah.
But as you progress and get stronger, and your decks can do more, 3 pile endings are going to become much more common. I'd say like they're probably like as common as province endings.
I think they're more.
May
I'm pretty sure they're
maybe more
more.
even. Yeah.
By like,
It's
I
close.
thought his stats were like, I thought it was like 60+% with 3 piles, and like a lot of the Marcus's like big spreadsheets. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but
I would not be surprised. 3 pile. It's like a really common ending. Because once your deck is strong, your deck threatens to be able to empty piles much faster, and you get and your deck probably has taken a lot more of those action cards and lowered the piles.
looks like they're arguing over who's reporting. But I mean, it looks like congrats to Dita. Did get a good win there, 4-2 win, so that'll put them up to I believe 500 on the season, 6-6. so puts them in position where if they play well the last couple, they can earn that promotion up to I division next season. Near like us, 2-4, not the best start, but still plenty of time to come back as well. DZ saying he needs to do something with his life. Anyways, do you have any final comments, J Nails, before we sign off for the night?
Uh, so yeah, just to recap some of the key lessons here. Gold, it's a weak card. Provinces, don't buy them so early. Villages, they're really good, but not early, and not in a deck without terminal action cards. You want to mix with those.
Yeah,
I think those are my main takeaways
yeah, I
here.
think that's a good takeaway. I think mine, I think we talked about it a couple times, is just having focus and having a thing. Take a couple minutes, especially if you're new to cards. Don't be afraid to take 5 minutes and just tell your opponent, obviously, if you're gonna take more than a couple minutes, but just don't be afraid to take some time and really start to have a game plan and really think about, like, okay, how does this fit in with my deck? It's felt like a lot of kind of aimless deck building of just, oh, this looks good, I'm just going to throw it in the deck, and you kind of got a melting pot of things that didn't really go together, which in some kingdoms is going to happen, right? We talked about that in the first kingdom, that might just happen in certain kingdoms. But I think trying to have a clear vision, and that's the sort of thing you just get with experience. So just play a lot of games, you know, I don't even know if listening to games is that helpful until you get used to the cards. I think just play enough games until you experience the cards, as much as you can, and then eventually you'll start to see some of those synergies come in. But
Yeah,
anyways, thanks to everyone who watched. Thanks JNails for doing this with me. That was a lot of fun. I know I learned a lot, so I hope that Nerilika and Dita. Thanks for letting us commentate the game. I hope we weren't too harsh on you, and I hope you learn a lot from this and continue to improve and enjoy Dominion. So thanks everyone. Have a good night.
peace.